8 a.m. in City Hall chambers. At this time, we'll do, as always, our invocation and our pledge. We'll call up Pastor Jason DePoy from Bayside Community Church. Thank you. Please stand.
Well, good morning and thank you. On behalf of our lead pastors, Randy and Amy Bizette from Bayside, we're honored to be here, and we thank you for the invitation to open up today's session in prayer. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come to you and open today's council, seeking your counsel. According to your word in 1 Timothy, we lift up to you the mayor, the vice mayor, each council member, first responders, and every person leading in positions of authority here in the city of Bradenton. We ask for your wisdom. You said in your word in James chapter 1 that if we require wisdom, we should ask of you, and you will not hold back, but pour out your wisdom liberally. Would you open our eyes of our understanding to show our civil servants how to lead our city so that your will can be accomplished in our community? Give each of them wise and discerning hearts to skillfully govern the people of our city. Help them to solve problems, implement what's right and good, to bring order, stability, prosperity for our land. Lord, we pray for unity in our city. We come against and tear down all strongholds that lead to strife and division, so the people of our city can lead a quiet, peaceable, and productive life. Father, we lift up to you those that are struggling with poverty, addiction, violence, and homelessness. May your presence be with them to comfort them and set them free from whatever is holding them back from the life that you have ordained for them. And then give our leaders strategies on how to reach these individuals and provide solutions to free them from their traumatic cycle. Finally, we lift up the next generation. Lord, guard our children and protect them from all evil and perversion. May they draw close to you and be taught and raised in a manner that would generate an intelligent, humble, powerful, and godly generation of leaders for our tomorrow. May your blessing be increased and rest on these leaders, our city, and our neighbors. May we be a community that recognizes Jesus as Lord and receive all the good things you've prepared for each of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 And at this time, I'd like to ask Colonel Lee to come forward and lead us in our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Pastor. Have a great day. All right, at this time, we'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
The first item on the agenda is a proclamation that I'll read on behalf of the mayor. It's Manatee County Habitat for Humanity 30th Anniversary Celebration Year, August 2024 through August 2025. Whereas Manatee County Habitat for Humanity has been a cornerstone in the community, providing affordable homeownership opportunities for low-income families since its founding in August 1994. And whereas Manatee County Habitat for Humanity, through partnerships with homeowners, volunteers, and donors, not only builds houses, but builds homes, relationships, and neighborhoods where families in our local communities are offered a better life, where children are safe, where property values increase and crime is reduced, and where dreams of homeownership can become a reality. And whereas Manatee County Habitat for Humanity's affordable home ownership program features 0% 30-year mortgages, sustainable building practices, and comprehensive homeowner education. And whereas since its founding, Manatee County Habitat for Humanity has built 155 homes and currently has over 70 future home sites acquired, and is committed to building a minimum of 10 homes annually to serve more families in need. And whereas Manatee County Habitat for Humanity has set an ambitious fundraising goal of $3 million in 30 months and seeks community support through donations and volunteer efforts to build 30 homes in 30 months. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jean Brown, as mayor of the city of Bradenton, Florida, do hereby proclaim August 2024 through August 2025 as Manatee County Habitat for Humanity 30th Anniversary Celebration Year, and encourage all citizens to recognize and support this vital organization's efforts.
Thank you. And who do we have coming forward? Yep, go up to the podium. Come up with her. Anybody that's with her, come on. Just right on, talk, introduce who you are, obviously on the microphone there.
I'm Emily Lane. I'm the one that has to raise the $3 million.
Good.
But no, I just want to thank everyone on the city council, and I know you're pretty much the CRA board as well, for all that you have done for us over so many years, and in the many ways you support us in our mission. We are super excited. This year, we look to put at least 16 families in houses, which is huge. These are families that would never be able to buy a house, and through us, they're able to achieve that American dream of homeownership and build family wealth. It leads to, frankly, pulling a lot of families completely out of poverty in that life cycle. So thank you for all you do for us. We look forward to working with you in the future.
I heard you have a challenge for us, though. What we talked about what we talked about yesterday. Okay, what are you challenging this council and administrative staff to do?
Actually, I will say,
Yes.
I will challenge you to work with us to get more property in the CRA in our hands affordably. We did just sell the Dollar House after all.
Yep.
Juan's moved in there with his family. But we challenge you to help us acquire more property in the city of Bradenton, especially in the CRA, so that we can make it more beautiful, make it safer for others by improving the quality of those neighborhoods.
All right, and also, the other challenge we'll put is, we want to try to get, the next time there's that Saturday or whatever day, we can all go out and swing a hammer.
Yes.
So that's,
I would love to see all of y'all on
Yep,
the job,
yep.
and we would make a huge fuss over that,
Ma-
wouldn't we?
yeah. Mary Ann will make some good snickerdoodle brownies and cookies and all of that. So.
Oh, I'm loving that.
I was gonna say, I've done it before.
Yeah.
I don't think my paint job was.
We'll give you equipment and show you how to do something.
Yeah, I learned that you don't give someone with OCD the caulking job.
Is that you?
That was me.
Okay. I'm glad to hear
That was me. And, you know, I know in the construction industry, the saying is, heck, we'll caulk it. Well, I wanted it.
Perfect.
So I didn't, it was perfect. I didn't get a lot done, but it was perfect.
Well, let's get a quick picture, and they have to try to fix the mic at the podium. So why don't you guys come up here, and then we'll stand behind you. And the proclamation, just hold it open so you can see it. Hold it up high.
Okay.
And then is that microphone anywhere there?
Oh, gee. Josh is getting frisky.
No, I didn't. I went high. Thank you. All right.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah, I went high.
So do you think we can fix it, or do we need to take a complete recess? Take a second?
Let's take a recess. Let's take a recess.
Mr. Mayor, they're requesting a recess.
Okay, well, let's just take about 2 or 3 minute recess, and we can hope they get it done. So we'll be recessed for a few minutes. Golf cart's even exciting now. Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. Madam Clerk?
Item 4A is a LECOM VODA mobility study.
Okay. Come forward, it's MPO staff and
Consulting team. Yes, good morning. Thank you for having us here today. We appreciate your support on our effort here at the MPO. For the record, my name is Ryan Brown. I'm the Deputy Director and Planning Manager for the Sarasota Manatee MPO. With me today is our consulting team here from Benish, and I'll let them guide you through our slides. We really do appreciate your time and letting us come back and present to you our final project. This will come back to our board, as you all know, in September for final approval. So with that, I'll turn it over to Robert, and they'll guide you through some of these slides.
all right, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Thank you, Ryan. For the record, Robert Modi's project manager with Benish. Here to tell you a little bit about our project since the last time we were here, which I believe was back in March. I'll go through a little bit of our project background, public engagement process, go through that pretty quickly since you all are pretty familiar with that. Let you know what we found in our needs assessment, and then some projects that we identified to address those needs, as well as how we went ahead and prioritized those, and then tell you a little bit about some of our recommended funding and next steps. So a little on the project background. This came from the 2045 LRTP, which looked at kind of economic engines within the area, baseball being one of those within the two-county area. So our study looked at the current transportation system needs, looking at how can we improve those from a complete streets standpoint, looking at how can we make these roads a little bit safer to use. And then, of course, accessibility is a big one, and looking at what we can do to enhance accessibility within the area. So a little bit about our public engagement. It was kind of a two-tier process, one that was more public focused, one that was more practitioner focused. On the public side, we looked at a online survey where the city and MPO advertised that. MCAT also provided some little cards on vehicles so that folks riding MCAT could learn about the survey. And then some MPO staff actually went out and solicited some responses at the public market in person. We also did a walking audit with some members of the public where we actually walk around the study area, get to know the study area, so that you can see, maybe a different perspective than just driving it. We also had 2 public workshops, pop-up style, one at Motorworks Brewing and one at Bradenton Public Market. On the practitioner side, we had a stakeholder working group that helped guide the entire process, all the decision-making, that sort of thing. Had really great participation from a variety of city departments on that, which we're really thankful for, as well as MCAT and FDOT. So special thanks to everybody who participated. We did a walking audit with that group as well to kind of get that perspective. And then, of course, we've been to City Council twice now, and we will wrap up by presenting to MPO committees and the MPO board next month. So a little about what we found. It's a super changing built environment. It's rapidly changing. Partway through our process, we learned about City Park, which is transformational in this area. A ton of brand new kind of mid-rise residential development, those sorts of things. So really rapidly changing, but at the same time, you have constrained right-of-way, really narrow right-of-way. So roadway expansion isn't going to happen. So you kind of got to work within what you've got. Those roads range from really great lighting to completely, non-existent lighting. So lighting, drainage was another big issue. And then, of course, just general maintenance needs on those streets. We also looked at some safety trends, found that those tended to be concentrated along 14th Tamiami. Sidewalks that kind of end, sometimes they don't quite exist, maybe not well maintained. Not a lot of opportunities to cross those big north-south streets in a safe way, especially if you're on foot, and no bike facilities at all. So those kind of needs that we identified informed our projects and prioritization. You'll see that we have a much broader report. So this is a really high-level view, but we put projects into 5 broad categories. When they kind of overlap, we do reference those to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible. You can refer back. Those categories were corridor complete streets projects. Those are things like the 9th Street improvements that I'll talk to you about in a couple slides. Crossing improvements, so opportunities, when can we add new safe ways to cross these big north-south streets? Bicycle and pedestrian facilities, so what can we do about fixing sidewalk gaps, introducing safe places to ride a bike? Public realm improvements, those are opportunities for things like streetscape, transit stops, where can we introduce new public art, especially in the Village of the Arts. And then safety, maintenance, and operations, those are your kind of day-to-day improvements, so ADA, striping, those sorts of things. Our considerations on those tended to be towards the scope of work, how long would it take to construct these improvements, and how complex are the improvements. So prioritization, this is, each project was then, had prioritization factors applied to it that were weighted based off of feedback that we received from the stakeholder working group, as well as those factors themselves. They included from left to right there, the highest to the lowest weight, safety, multimodal benefit, accessibility, resilience, so storm resilience, funding, implementability, ease of implementation really, planning, how constructible they were, and how they would benefit the economy and tourism. So this is a decision-making tool, not necessarily if something is number one, that doesn't mean you have to do that first. It's just a way to help prioritize what your next steps look like, and those were applied to all projects. So going through a couple of the signature projects, these were things that we talked about at our last meeting with you all, and they've been since refined. Really, they're the same basic project, which are on 14th and Tamiami as well. Are wider sidewalks, wider travel lanes, has really narrow travel lanes now. More frequent crossings. A lane is kind of repurposed into a turn lane, which allows the road to function much, much better than it does today, without stopping in the middle of that lane to make any kind of left turn. It also has some opportunities for some new traffic signals and mid-block crossings, as well as some potential roundabouts, since that was a big ask of staff. So the next steps with that would be initiate the conversation early with FDOT, perform a really robust traffic study, as well as performing some of that early public outreach, and then reviewing those right-of-way needs, especially as they pertain to potential roundabouts. Then from a funding standpoint, we think that this is a really strong candidate for federal grant funding, especially the SS4A program. And then there's, of course, some potential state funding as well to kind of build up those local dollars with match dollars. 9th Street, again, a similar project, but kind of different circumstances. This one has been refined since the last time we spoke to you. It's also got those wide sidewalks, narrower traffic lanes, or travel lanes in this case. Lots of frequent crossings, safe places to cross the street as somebody on foot, especially since there's so many pedestrian generators on this corridor. Some landscape meetings to beautify the area, new traffic signals like I mentioned, and some potential roundabouts as well. This is something that really is not a lane elimination, so the traffic study doesn't need to be quite as robust, but certainly for roundabouts, getting that traffic study to make sure that those work from a flow standpoint, especially as those relate to any changes that might happen on Tamiami 14th. And then, of course, reviewing those right-of-way needs. I know the city owns quite a bit of the land around where our roundabouts are proposed, so what are ways that we can work within that to make sure that we can fit these roundabouts for an appropriate design vehicle. Funding, certainly federal grant eligibility, and then there's some potential state funding. This also partially runs through your CRA. Another was a opportunity to include kind of a bike boulevard. There are no bike facilities within the study area. So this is what we call a bike boulevard, low stress network. It's kind of marked by pavement art, kind of nodding to the Village of the Arts, opportunities for more of the public art, more engaging situation out there. Some wayfinding. There's some potential for green stormwater. You can see in the diagram in the upper right, that parking area could be an opportunity to put green stormwater storage underneath those on-street parking spaces. And then there's some opportunities to include some bulb outs here and there to include more public art within that Village of the Arts. Next steps on that would really be that public engagement, working with folks to develop wayfinding. In that situation, we see that as a really great opportunity to brand this, add more public art, look at those green stormwater opportunities as well. If this were, it could be a very simple project of just painting and pavement markings, or it could be a opportunity to try to improve some drainage in this area in kind of a forward-thinking way. And then, of course, with anything with public art, making sure that those folks are being engaged and that this is something that everybody in the community feels that they can be a part of. This is a really great candidate for CRA funding. It's a fairly low-cost project, and the CRA is really, really interested in using the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, which allows for green stormwater improvements. So definitely something that CRA staff is really, really excited about. So a little on funding and next steps. Really, our full project includes project sheets. Those have a a reference back to the 18 potential funding programs at a state and federal and local level that we looked at. There are recurring recurring funding opportunities, grant opportunities, loan opportunities. Each one applied to each project that we feel would qualify under that program. And then each one is, includes a level of complexity in the project, the level of public engagement that we expect to be required to get that project constructed. And then they're also kind of, grouped into different implementation categories. So next steps, really, beyond this being adopted at the MPO board level for you all, is with those short and midterm projects, a lot of those are really shovel ready, they're maintenance, that kind of thing. Really great budgeting tool, maybe not for this upcoming fiscal year, but within coming fiscal years. So identifying those immediate funding sources and beginning that design and procurement process. On the long-term projects, those the first two signature projects, it's really initiating that stakeholder coordination really, really early, talking to FDOT, property owners, the public, MCAT where it impacts their their routes as well. Initiating that really robust traffic study, especially for 14th Tamiami Trail, and identifying those project development needs, those kind of next steps of who are we going to have to do our survey, that sort of thing. And then, of course, identifying kind of your funding opportunities. What do we have locally that can tell you what your match looks like, and that can that can start to line you up to federal grant opportunities based off of your local dollars to kind of really start multiplying what you've got available locally. So I know you had asked for a brief presentation, so that is the conclusion of my brief presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am, Vice Mayor.
Good morning. Thank you so much for this. I would like to request that we have this information brought to our CRA advisory boards for them to be brought up to speed on what has been done in the past, what's being done now, and what the future could look like.
Yeah, absolutely. We can plan on doing that, and we'd be happy to share all this information with them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Perry?
Good presentation, Mr. Modi, and we appreciate your work and MPO's work on this. I've waited with bated breath for about 2 years when Kim Clayback told me you guys were doing the baseball study. And then City Park popped into
Mike.
it. I'm sorry, and other issues. I guess my question is, you talked about, you're going to take it to the MPO board. Can you tell me a little bit of the process as far as when it goes to the board, how the MPO can help us, both the CRA and the city, master plan these types of improvements to roadways and to streetscapes and lighting, which are critical to the success of the City Park area, Village of the Arts, and Tamiami. I'm kind of a brick, sticks, pipe guy. I like building things, but the planning gets a little tough, and there's usually on the finance side a multitude of different things that have to happen first before you can be eligible for supplemental funding from either the state through direct appropriations, grants, DOT, federal government. I don't know if NEPA applies, categorical exclusions. And so as I start to look at this, I go, oh, 7 or 8 years. And I get it. Good things come to those who wait. That's what I was always told. And there's truth to it. But as I look at the City Park project we're looking at, I'd like to have that coming out of the ground in 2 to 3 years. I've got to do all the underground work there and put building pads for what we want to vertically place there. But talking with Mr. Burton, he wants to be a year to a year and a half behind us to try to do streetscape and area improvements to transportation and lighting and sidewalks and all that. And it's a beautiful vision, and it would do immensely great things for the redevelopment of that area across the board. How do I bring all that together?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's it is a complex question, and I think there are multiple ways that we can go about doing that. In our study, as Robert mentioned, there are scaled, levels of complexity that are built into these types of projects, right? Lighting, streetscaping, some of these other improvements we've identified as short-term improvements, things that we can go out and do operationally, either with funding that we've identified, the state as well. The state has a short-term budget. Some of these longer-term projects, say like 9th and 14th, yeah, those are going to require substantial traffic study, right, to maintain throughput and things like that. These are significant roadways and moving cars as well. We can't forget about that. However, we fully agree that there needs to be something done in terms of the streetscaping that would complement your city park effort. So we've tried to go about ways of identifying short, medium, and long term so you can have an idea. That short term being in that 2 to 3 year time range, 4 to 6 in the medium, 7 and beyond for a long term type improvement. So hopefully through this study, and we can certainly walk you through specific projects, right? I think of the projects that we've identified, there are ways that we can initiate those with funding source specifically identified for those things. So when it goes to the MPO board, it will then work its way through our priority list, right? This was a study that we adopted back in 2019 through our 2045 LRTP. It kind of ingratiated itself into our funding process. So now we're simply taking the projects that we've identified and then making them eligible. So city staff would then be able to come and apply to us for those projects. We would then work with you all closely to identify the funding source that then would apply. So it is complex in nature. However, we think we've done a pretty good job identifying those short all the way up to long-term type improvements so we can come up with a strategy that mirrors your efforts at City Park.
That's a great explanation. When will we next discuss with you how to put together the proper complement of CRA, city, public works, other folks with you and consultants or whoever it may be?
Absolutely. And I think the first step too, we can certainly reach out to the CRA, present that board and make it clear what they are. We have talked with Kendon throughout the process, and they've shown great interest in helping support financially through this. They've got dollars that are there that are available to do this type of work. In the fall, starting this fall, we're doing our annual call for projects. That will be the first opportunity for city staff to bring some of these projects back and apply for them. And ongoing, we're in the process of updating our long-range plan, where then we will work with you all and city staff to say, out of these, which are the most important, and we will work to make them, in our plan, we call cost feasible, or something that we can financially accomplish using the cost revenue that what we've been provided, the state has provided to us, and provide you a reasonable timeline, in 5-year time bands as we do it, on when we think that these projects can be funded.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, thank you. I've got Councilwoman Moore, then Coker, then Coachman.
Part of your community outreach when you get to that phase, will that involve, I spoke with Dr. Burton about sidewalks and at least my desire to try to shade them because that area is very sun exposed, and if we're trying to encourage people to walk back and forth from the park in Voda, I don't see how that's going to be something people are actually going to do if we don't deal with that. But I know it's tight. So how does something on the outside of your focus tie in?
Yeah, so I don't know, Robert, if you want to add anything on that front, but we can certainly work on that.
I think that one of the things we talked about, and that came up at Motorworks, that we're really going to have to do some public-private partnerships because, as you said early, we're not going to be able to acquire much land. But if we work with the businesses to beautify their business, that will put some of those trees and really work together as a public-private partnership, P3, and go from there. I think that's the best way to do it.
And that is exactly where I was going, especially along 9th. We looked really hard at what could we do with including street trees that also meet the standards of, the setback from the edge of pavement, and having a tree that, frankly, could grow to be healthy and has the root zone. Frankly, it's you can have a sidewalk or you can have a tree. So what we're finding, though, is that on the back of the sidewalk on private property, there are lots of shade trees already, and so that's kind of what Mayor Brown was referencing is working with these private property owners to, perhaps get an easement, or is it a beautifying grant or what have you. Lots of different ways to get shade trees constructed on that private property so that they do still provide that benefit because the back of the sidewalk is the property line, so you are naturally close. The really great benefit is that the CRA is partly within this study area, especially along 9th. So that's an opportunity to, having a CRA it's an invaluable source of funding for the nuts and bolts, what's happening underground, and also beautifying. I mean, all of these improvements would help, help achieve that CRA goal of eliminating slum and blight. And you've got a really great CRA director who is really open-minded and forward-thinking in crafting those CRA plans to allow for what types of activities can be funded under the CRA. So certainly working with private property owners in the sense of shade, in the sense of really all of these projects where you've got the CRA boundary to work with, absolutely a really, really great way to start getting this much more quickly implemented.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Yes, I have two questions, and they're kind of, first off, with the underground storage of the water, does it go back down into, is that just a way to store it and then it goes back down into the aquifer, or?
So, I'm not a geologist. One thing that it's soil is a big consideration of that. Some of it is temporary storage so that it can percolate back into the into the aquifer. And then some of it, as you get to, it would accommodate a certain rainfall event. And then once you exceed that, then it begins to go back into the city's stormwater drain system. Mm-hmm. These can also be tied back into the stormwater drain system. I couldn't speak to the level of complexity and cost that would be appropriate in this situation because it really is dependent upon elevation, upon soil type, and all kinds of other things. So I wouldn't want to speak to what it could do or what it should do, but absolutely it can be temporary storage for percolation underground, and it can also tie back into the system once you kind of exceed a limit. So there's lots of different really, really cool ways to implement green stormwater infrastructure. We, within our scope, weren't going out and doing soil tests, for example. So we wanted to leave it open as a possibility and identify an, potential funding source for that as well.
Okay. And then I'm a huge proponent of roundabouts. I think it keeps the traffic moving. The only time I see an issue is when you have a lot of pedestrian, and there at 17th and 9th is heavily pedestrian. So how do you keep the traffic moving during those heavy pedestrian times?
Absolutely. So that is one element of this, is that what we were looking at was what is a probable design vehicle. So that could be a box truck. It could be a great big semi-truck, right? And then what we did was we designed a roundabout that at a very high level, conceptual level, could accommodate that design vehicle within an appropriate footprint. You don't want to put the world's largest roundabout there because, of course, there's going to be a lot of right-of-way you need. And so what we've got is the minimum footprint needed for what design vehicle we think was appropriate for this location. From a pedestrian standpoint, that would need to be worked out in the design process. There are opportunities to kind of limit that, but for special events, for example, you could have somebody directing and allowing crossing now and stopping now. So that would become an operational issue, I think, especially as it pertains to large special events, high attendance games, any kind of events that are happening in the future at an expanded city park. But at a high level, that was not something that we reviewed, but there are options and opportunities to manage that once it's constructed, and those can be contemplated during the full design.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Coachman?
Yes, thank you. If I'm understanding the box that you had, it seems like it's involving two of our CRAs. It's the Tamiami Trail and the Central CRA. Your project is labeled LECOM VODA. There's a part of that box that is called the Singletary area. And I know it's not one of the major, arteries that you're focused on, but as our city administrator asked, if you could give us some suggestions on how can we mitigate certain areas outside of that, which would be very important to our city park project, and that's that Singletary area. So because it's not part of the, your title, I just want to emphasize, and the CRA is quite accustomed to me emphasizing that that Singletary area exists, and we really need some, some expertise.
Right,
in that.
absolutely. No, so we just wanted a catchy name for the plan. We looked at everything within that box, which, obviously extends beyond Village of the Arts in those northeast and below 17. So certainly ways that we looked at outside of kind of these core two corridors that we looked at, City Park and the core of Village of the Arts. Absolutely ADA accessibility, drainage, sidewalks, and lighting. Those are the items that we found to be the highest need in areas outside of kind of our core of where, Village of the Arts has mostly roads have sidewalks. It has the kind of custom lighting scheme. The corridors have great lighting, pretty good sidewalk coverage. But those were the areas that we found certainly lighting and those sorts of things. And, based off of our kind of meeting with Jeff Burton is that the ability to fund recommendations like that are things that the CRA is already capable of doing. And so it would be going through the process within the CRA board, advisory boards, making sure that this is an appropriate, or what that group feels is an appropriate use of funding to move those forward.
Yeah, and I would also just add that when we were doing and setting the boundaries of the limits of this study, we did take into account a number of ongoing FDOT projects, city projects that would impact us directly, right? As we know, there are several downtown Bradenton operational improvements that the department's looking at evaluating. We're looking at the construction of the new DeSoto Bridge, the Bradenton Palmetto Connector PD&E that the MPO is working with the department to fund. We did take into consideration the impacts of all surrounding projects within this physical area, is just where we had the budget to be able to go and provide specific countermeasures. So, as mentioned and Robert stated, we did look at the grander scheme of this southern part of Bradenton in general, and how our study and the implementation things that we decided to come up with would impact the ongoing efforts that were already out there. Yeah.
And I also think, Councilwoman Coachman, the master planning for City Park plays into a lot of that, because it does touch, when you say LECOM, it's a broader thing than this LECOM field. It goes farther to the east and north when you look at that. So that was, had a great meeting the other day for the 13, 14 people in the room that's continuing that master plan for City Park area.
Well, and I guess I'm really kind of saying that for the public, because LECOM, they may be thinking just
Right,
LECOM, and if it does encompass Singletary, that's all good with me.
All right, thank you very much.
Great, appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll move on to citizen comment. Citizen comment will be accepted during the citizen comment portion of the meeting on any non-agenda items. Agenda items, future agenda items, or topic of relevance to the city. Comments will be accepted on the public hearings at the appropriate time. So I have no citizen comment cards at this time, so we'll move forward to consent agenda. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to move for approval of the consent agenda, items A through Q, with the correction to item K with the scrivener's error. It should be 17th Avenue, not 17th Street.
Yes, ma'am. All right, any other discussion? Here, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote to approve in Ward 3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1,
Yes.
and 2.
Yes.
Okay, approved. Consent agenda approved 5-0. All right, at this time, I'm going to move the agenda around a little bit for a second reading, and we're going to go to F to start out for the ordinance for the public hearing. So, Madam Clerk, if you'll read F, I believe is the right one.
Ordinance 4047, an ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, amending Chapter 6 related to alcoholic beverages, amending Section 6-1 to add definitions, amending Section 6-2 to prohibit alcoholic beverages from being sold, consumed, served, or permitted to be served or consumed in any establishment between the hours of 12 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., providing for exemptions, providing for any establishment licensed under the state beverage laws that desires to remain open for the purpose of sale, service, or consumption between the hours of 12 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. to apply for an after midnight permit, adding provisions for the application requirements and fee, providing for regulations related to the after midnight permit, providing for conditions to be imposed on the after midnight permit, providing for suspension and revocation of the after midnight permit, providing for the appointment of a hearing officer to rule on suspension and revocation after midnight permits, providing for enforcement, amending Chapter 6 to add new Section 6-7, establishing evidence of prosecution of violations, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, so we have staff coming forward. And I'm just going to say a couple things to start out, that there was quite a bit of propaganda that went out about fees and different things going out, which, you know, none of the fees have been set, and I will have a comment to this council to ask for some other options on fees as we go forward, and especially for the beginning of grandfathering in that. But we wanted to present some of the situations that have happened downtown and kind of go through some things to get the facts out there, because as we know, propaganda spreads like wildfire, and at one point I heard there was going to be an $1,800 yearly fee to get this, and that's just not true. So, Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. At the council's discretion, we do have some video that we'd like to play just to set the stage. We can play it as long as you need. It's about 5 minutes, or we can provide some talking points in advance. I know that Mr. Driscoll has a hearing. He has to leave at 9:45, but whenever you guys want to stop us, I'll just have Captain Thiers and Detective Cerniglia start it out.
Captain Thiers?
Good, thank you. We have 3 examples of cases that have been highlighted in the downtown district. The first is dating back September of 2023, shooting call in the street. And this is going to be video from our city surveillance cameras. Thank you. What you'll see is a fight ensuing, and then you see the victim fall down. He was shot. Over to your right-hand side is our police officers responding. They were within 30 to 40 feet when this shooting occurred.
And on the upper cameras, there's no sound.
Correct.
But on the body cameras, you'll
That's
hear
correct.
sound.
Where are we? I'm a
300
little
block of 12th
disoriented.
Street.
I'm sorry?
We're in the 300 block of 12th Street West, facing.
Is this the most recent event?
No.
No.
Well, that event will not be
Okay.
shown.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, that event is still under active investigation.
This was in September.
Recovered a firearm. Subject was charged with attempted murder. This is body cam footage from a brawl that took place on 12th Street West. I will apologize in advance for any language you may hear. Sorry, 214.
Get the fuck out!
I apologize, I was trying to pause it. What's significant about this case is this encompassed our entire police force from the city that evening to get this crowd under control. while that was, to include our crime reduction team. That was in the middle of all of this. While that was happening, the following calls were held. A harassment call, a domestic battery, a suspicious person with 3 suspects going through vehicles, an abandoned 911 call, another domestic battery, a suspicious circumstance with 2 individuals trying to break into a residence, another fight, not in the downtown district, and an assist for the fire department. They had a structure fire going at the same time, and we always go and assist them with the blocking of streets and things like that. We could not respond to those because our entire police department was in the downtown jurisdiction at the time of this call. And then this is another fight where one of our officers is actually struck during the arrest.
Get back.
Cut it out.
1277. You're going to jail. You're going to jail. There you go. You should have just stopped. Hey, 10-15. 10-15. You want to go to jail too? Yeah, take the hole.
If you will bear with me for 1 second, I'd like to pull up the downtown footage from the brawl. Not the one we just witnessed, but the one prior to that. If this will play, what is this? Apologize. Just to show you the crowds we were dealing with that evening. Hundreds of people, and it goes from 3rd Avenue all the way to 4th Avenue. Our officers were running between fights that evening.
And what time was that approximately?
This would have been around the same time. It started about 2:15, 2:12, 2:15, and we wrapped it up around. And that's just a replay of the same video.
All right, thank you. I think, do you have any comments you'd like to make? You've been doing a lot down there. And trying to work with the business owners. And how this all came about is the several business owners on Main Street came to me, I know came to you, and were asking us, can we work to do something? So this is us doing something to try to make it a safer place.
This is us doing something, and this is, when I came out of retirement, came back downtown, I was a little bit beside myself on how much nighttime, how bad it's gotten downtown, to where I talked to business owners, and they were all like, there's one specific bar that, I don't want to say names, that closes at midnight now because they didn't want to deal with the problems downtown. And, my heart goes out to that business owner because, we all know the bars make most of their monies between, say, 11 and 2 o'clock in the morning. This is a definite need for the city. What you're doing is you're protecting your citizens. You're also protecting your police officers. So I'm all for this ordinance, and I think it would definitely help out the officers and the citizens.
And we did the first reading on a Wednesday 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, I think it was. But the next night, we had an incident happen that we can't discuss publicly because it's still under investigation.
I mean, we can discuss certain parts of it.
Right.
It was a shooting in a bar downtown, and we've had outreach. We had bar owners that reached out and said this couldn't have come at a worse time. That incident was not related to a bar downtown. An angry individual picked a fight with somebody. He went into a bar and he shot someone. That's not the bar's fault. There are going to be circumstances where that would not affect this ordinance whatsoever. We're looking to help with controlling the crowds, controlling the weapon, controlling the
But if
drugs.
we had 3 dead people, it affects the city of Bradenton.
Absolutely does.
And if we had an officer walk around the corner at the wrong time
Exactly.
and got shot,
That is correct.
and I know this, most people know this answer, but are guns allowed in alcohol bar establishments?
They're not. Florida state statute prohibits even concealed weapons carriers from having a bar inside, or having a weapon inside of a bar. It's actually a felony, so you can't do it. period, the end.
Mr. Perry,
I just have a couple quick adjuncts.
get by the microphone, please.
I just gotta have a couple quick adjunct questions. I know that you guys have put down enforcement teams down there, and that I get the reports in the morning often, and I see a lot of weapons basically being confiscated that appear to be in plain sight, people leaving them in their cars. Officers are doing what they're supposed to do, and checking the surrounds, and they'll find individuals with weapons. There'll be glass pipes to show some sort of intoxicant, drugs, or whatever. Probably not a good recipe for people that are in bars consuming alcohol at 2 o'clock. Wouldn't you agree?
Agreed. To include drunk driving, you can add that as well.
Right.
A significant amount from downtown.
Yeah. You feel that the late crowd tends to have probably more ancillary types of criminal activity associated with it, whether it's weapons or violence or things like that, than, I don't know, a dinner time crowd.
He says yes. I would say I would lean back and review the statistics on that, but yes.
And what other, I know that the pier closes at 11, I think, and I think Go Bricks closes early.
Oak and Stone too, they close.
Oh, okay.
I believe around 10. I think they're 10 o'clock, yeah.
But I know some of them have said if, in the past, they stayed open later.
Correct.
And they would, but they've closed early because, and again, the public has come to us.
Yes.
And the image that we've got now is something that we don't want to close anybody and lose anybody, anything at all, but we want to have some rules and regulations where if you're doing the right things, nothing changes.
Yeah, there's nothing in place now. You know, we're looking for something that gives us the ability to go back and correct some of these problems. We want a vibrant, safe downtown. I think every one of us in this room wants a vibrant and safe downtown, a flourishing downtown, a financially safe downtown. But we want it.
I saw Councilwoman Coachman, then Barnaby, and then Coker.
Okay, thank you. I think also there's a concern that while so much of a law enforcement presence is needed downtown, you listed almost, it sounded like 10 or more serious calls that had to be put on hold or not.
Required response. And the chief and I have watched the videos, our officers running priority from the farthest districts of the
Right.
city, east and west, to get to downtown to assist with that problem.
Uh,
So yes, then
and
we're putting the rest of the city on
The rest
hold
of the cities,
to deal with,
yeah.
with one issue.
And noteworthy, and we didn't put it in here, I don't want to try to make this an emotional issue, but even the night that the deputy was shot, the reason we had to ask for assistance in getting out to that original call is our folks were tied up downtown dealing with some stuff. So, and the one thing I just want to add, as a chief, I say that some chiefs kind of reverse that order, but I say all the time, my number one job as a chief of police is to take care of my officers, because if I take good care of them, they will take good care of our community. They will do what we all want them to do to protect and serve and safeguard. That situation that you saw in the video is not me taking good care of them. I have officers out there in harm's way. They were outgunned, outnumbered. That was a dangerous situation, and we looked just across the bridge yesterday. Palmetto officer involved in a shooting. Knock on wood, we've been very lucky by the grace of God that we haven't experienced that in many, many, many years. It's a catastrophic situation waiting to happen if we don't get our arms around this. And that's why we stand here today, not to try to impact you emotionally, but objectively, it's a situation that we don't want it to get worse. We want it to get better. We all want the same thing, so.
Council or Vice Mayor Barnaby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe out in the county requires bars to close at 2 a.m., is that correct?
Tony's saying yes.
Well, the vast majority of them, I will say, because there may be one or two hither and yon that don't, but.
I think there's a couple that.
I have a few under this agreement, which are required to close at 11.
Okay. Well, my question is if
most of the drinking establishments in the county close at 2 o'clock. Why would we want to stay open until 2:30 to encourage people to come down here because this is the only place they can get their drink on?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know if I have the answer to that. I would say the
And I'm not-
majority,
I-
no. I think a large portion of the bars downtown do their last call 1:45-ish usually. And they're usually moving people to pay their tabs and be out the door between 2 and 2:30. Because a lot of our issues in the parking lots, in the street, occur right after closing. It's when everybody gets flushed into the streets and we're dealing with the problems. The instances we just showed you were not inside of bars, they were
No,
out in
but
the streets.
Again, if people have been out in the county imbibing and that area is shut down and they know that in the city of Bradenton, they can keep drinking until 2:30 according to our ordinance.
That's correct.
That the bars can stay open. I think that is feeding part of this issue. I think they leave one area of town and come down here. And
I would agree.
I'm gonna be hard pressed to support something that allows them to stay open until 2:30.
Thank you. Councilman Coker?
Yeah, we know nothing happens quickly in government, and this to me is something I've felt for quite a while that we needed to be addressing somehow. I'm a little concerned that what we are proposing is somewhat of an administrative quagmire that, you know, isn't going to be enough of a change. I think we need to speak loudly and clearly. This is not Bradenton. We don't want to ever see this again. And I think I agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Barnaby. 2:30, it's too late. If it were up to me, I'd say let's send a loud message, and last call, I'd say midnight. But I mean, I want to support the businesses, but I think that we've tried to be supportive of businesses and maybe let things go a little bit too long. I mean, when you have the big raid on all these people having illegal gambling machines in there, and you've got twerk nights and things like that going on downtown, that is not the vision that we have had when we've been investing quite a bit in our downtown to make it a place for everybody. And when you talk to people that are planning, you know, their weddings and they want to stay in the hotels downtown, they don't feel comfortable and they'll go somewhere else. So I would like to see us tighten this up. Now, I obviously understand there could be unintended consequences. So I think anything we do should have some kind of a review maybe after a year. But I want to send a loud message. And I mean, I would just say, rather than this special permit, I'd rather see us just cut the hours. But I want something done, and I want it done now. So.
Councilman Kramer?
Thank you for the presentation. I really just wanted to reserve the right to let the public speak and talk more after that.
No, it's a public hearing.
I know, but I want to talk after.
After that, okay, yeah, we'll have that chance. Councilwoman Moore?
I want to just make absolutely clear that I agree with what you all have said. We've invested a lot in downtown, and we've invested a lot in the officers, I think, to date, and I'm really excited with the state of the department and all that, you know, chief and captain have done to, you know, bolster it up and make it a strong unit. I don't like what is happening downtown. I don't like that people don't feel safe. And I agree that something needs to be done. All of that said, when I read the specifics of the ordinance, and this is maybe more towards Mr. Driscoll, the second half that deals with revocation or suspension, completely no problem whatsoever. It is very clear, it's enumerated, there's an opportunity for a hearing officer to review any decision that's made. My only issue is with the first half of the ordinance. I would suggest, without, you know, having been an expert in the drafting, and I know you worked very hard on it, so I would certainly, you know, welcome any comments. I just don't think it is advisable for us to have one person that determines the criteria for specific establishments. I would suggest, my suggestion is that we make it a committee of sorts, call it whatever you want, but law enforcement, obviously, chief is very appropriate to be one of the people. City administrator, maybe someone from the planning department to round it out. And I just use as an example the use of a metal detector. While that might be, from a law enforcement perspective, a very useful tool, maybe the planning department would object to the way that looks as well. You know, I think that there's different considerations, and I also think it just protects us from a favoritism, you know, any kind of, I think it's just checks and balances, accountability. To me, it makes more sense to have 2 or 3 people responsible for the decision that that business A has to do this and business B has to do that. The criteria is a little general, so if you compare the criteria that currently as written, the chief would look at to determine what that business that's applying, needs, that's more general than the enumerated reasons for revocation or suspension. And I'm okay with that if it was not just one human being that was making that determination. To Vice Mayor Barnaby's point, I also agree that we should match the county because it's just an encouragement to have people continue, or even just, you know, show up here at 1:15, 1:30 because they know they're going to get that extra time. Not an expert in that at all, but that just makes sense to me. So this is not, I'm not saying I'm not supporting it at all. I had specific concerns about specific parts of the first half as written.
Morning, Council. As far as the first half, I understand your point, and that it's just the general ordinance, and then we, the city, and the police department would have to come up with a policy and procedure to implement the ordinance. And as an example, Orlando, who this is very much mirrored from, has a 13-page policy and procedure on this, which defines the criteria for when the establishment would need extra duty officers or security, when they would need a metal detector, which could just be a wand. Everybody thinks of metal detectors as the big unit like we have, but they could utilize a wand as well. The key is that they're checking for weapons before they come in, if they're required to. So, and perhaps that policy and procedure part could be done with a committee as opposed to an individual. I mean, no offense to the chief, but it won't be the chief coming up with the policy and procedure. She would just be approving it once we, the police department, came up with that. But we could certainly include others in that as well, if that's the desire of council. So.
My thought is, I know I was aware, I meant to mention that as well. Thank you for bringing that up, that other cities do it, so we're not reinventing the wheel, and I think the action is very appropriate. I don't know how that would work, you know, because the ordinance states really the chief has the, you know, or the chief, I should say, because it's not, you know, it's not person specific, determines the criteria, and then there's really like no further review from that moment. So then would we, you know, what procedurally happens at this point that we've adopted this ordinance without the policy behind it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna talk first if that's all right, Miss. Okay. I don't disagree from the standpoint of, you know, you hate to have one individual being the kingmaker or queen maker when you're doing it. But when you look at the logistics, they do have the magistrate review. You know, if it comes down to, seems like it's out of the normal. I do totally agree that we don't want to have all these big metal detectors, you know, where people have to walk through, because then, as many people have said, ooh, what's wrong? And I'm going to give you the story that, and I might have already said this once before, but when all this stuff started happening, we really started putting a lot larger force downtown. It was probably about 9:50, and my wife and I were coming down Main Street, and we were going north, and we were at 4th Avenue, and there was a couple there with 3 children, and I'm guessing at ages 12, 9, and 7. Looked like those kids were there, and they looked like they were coming back. I would have guessed from O'Bricks from dinner, and They probably were in a baseball tournament because the one young 12-year-old looked like he was a baseball player. And she's like, wow, look at all the police officers. What's wrong down here? And, you know, I wanted to stop and go out and talk to them, but I didn't because I imagined they were staying at Spring Hill Suites for a baseball summer tournament. And that's not the image we want either, because that also shuts down our downtown more and more. So, you know, I do think there's a couple things that we've talked about in saying, okay, how can you make it a little bit more? And I'll tell you right now, the city council being the judge and jury came up, and I am opposed to that because that gets so political that it totally changes things. And we want this to be non-political. And you're talking about, you know, there was a lot of other video that we looked through that we could have shown that, you know, wasn't what, you know, people, it's public record if it comes to the point, but it's not stuff you want to see our city looking like. And we're lucky that we don't have 3 dead people at a bar from 2 weeks ago. You know, it could easily have been, and Mr. Perry says all the time, we're the luckiest city. When he was in Albuquerque, people didn't miss. And we could have that. So I know there's some, and that's the policy they'll come up with. Like I said about price, that's a policy. I'm going to ask the city council to obviously grandfather everybody in now. They still have to do the permitting part of it, but with no fee. And this isn't a yearly fee. This is a one-time fee. But we're going to waive that, ask the council to waive that fee in this ordinance, or as we go forward with the policy, as well as give everybody that timeline. Whenever it starts, you have 30 days to do it. You don't have 6 months to do it, but you'll have a time frame to get your permit in and do it. Because again, this is not about money. This is about me and all of us standing up there and saying we have a dead officer because of a fight started. That in one of the videos that I looked at, there was officers trying to get people under control, and they were grabbing at their guns. They were grabbing at their body. And what if they'd have got that gun? What would they have done with it? And that's not the shock value that I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to say we've got to start somewhere, and can we make it better? I agree with you. Yeah, there may be a policy, and nobody wants the chief, you know, in a place to say, oh, they're being a dictator. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with doing something, Chief.
And if I can just respond, you know, the goal of this ordinance is exactly that, not to put me in this huge position of power, but I think what we're trying to avoid is a bureaucracy that could surround this and make it a pretty clear cut. And I think it could be a pretty clear cut. If you read closely through the ordinance, you see very specific criteria that allows involvement by the police department. And when it says the chief, it really is the police department. It's not me acting in a silo. It's me acting in concert with the rest of my staff and understanding the laws that govern what we want to do and what our objectives are as well. We are looking at this from a community policing criteria, with first steps being meeting with the bar owners, establishing SEPTED visits.
Tell them what SEPTED is.
Community policing through environmental design visits, crime prevention through environmental design, and really getting in front of this and figuring out what we can do to make this a better place. I know that there was a concern that we would be looking back 12 months or 24 months. It's our position that everybody starts fresh, everybody starts new. It starts after we've met with every owner. What can we do to help? I know that the CRA is interested in providing cameras if folks want to increase their security and their lighting. We're all working on this together, and when we talk about hearing officers, and Mr. Driscoll and I spent quite a bit of time yesterday discussing that, what we don't want to see happen is things getting kicked down the road for 30 days and 60 days and 6 months and appeals and all that. If you all trust me to lead this organization, and you have for 9 years, then trust that we as an entity will carry this out as you all dictate with the terms of the ordinance, and we'll do it the right way. And if we need to tweak it, then we'll come back and tweak it. But we really want this to be a collaborative process. We have a lot of bar owners behind us. I don't know what they're going to say, but This is not going to be something, I don't feel, that's going to be negatively impactful if people simply do what they should do regardless to make our downtown area safer.
Ms. Moore?
I was just gonna remark that I saw you have answered my question, I think, because the hearing officer does not review the criteria to determine the grant of the permit. There is no, I mean, as written, there's no review. The police chief determines, and that's it. They either do it or they don't do it, and then they get it or they don't get it. It is only the suspension or the revocation that the hearing officer goes before them. And also, just to respond to that just a tiny bit, and Chief and I have talked about this, I trust her to make, you know, solid and unbiased determinations, but it's not always gonna be her. And so anytime we're doing something like this, my concern is always, well, what's gonna happen in the future? Maybe it is that we just put in a sunset to protect ourselves from the potential of, you know, who knows what relationships will be like, 15 years from now. We just heard at the wonderful fire station dedication yesterday that, 60 years ago, or I think it was, or 40 years ago, city council wouldn't give the fire department a shower in their fire department. And so we just don't, I don't know who's gonna be here, who are gonna be the players. I don't know.
Ms. Coker?
Well, the only thing I will say is that I think that we're doing this for public safety. And so, I mean, we have to trust our law enforcement. And as she said, it's really the whole department. And if, I just don't think we want to inject other interests into, I want this to be purely a decision based on public safety, and I have full faith in, if we don't, that speaks even louder. But we need to have full faith in our BPD, that's what comes first.
All right, we're gonna move to the public hearing, so then we'll have a debate after we get a motion. At this time, with the second reading, we're gonna open the public hearing. You can come forward and you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and your city of residence. So anyone, open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Please come forward. And state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. James Miller. Y'all know me as Cork. Owner of my wife and daughter of Cork Cigar Bar. I just want you to know that we, as business owners, want a safe downtown just as much as you all do. We just don't want to have, we've had meetings up to 4 or 5 years ago with city officials asking that we do something because we saw this was going to happen. We did not want an Ybor city, and that was our exact terminology. And here we are today going down that path, which we want to, with you, stop. We have operated as our bar for 17 years without having these type of issues or problems. And I probably shouldn't say this, but this reaction from you all is due to one new bar owner who came down and brought this element in, which we all disagreed with, and we've talked about it 2-3 years ago. Is this ordinance for just after 12 permit? Because those rules and violations can be misconstrued or construed, or between anything happens between 8, 9, 10, 11, before 12. I don't know if that's clarified in there. And I'm hoping y'all have mentioned it. I'd like to see this sundown after 12 months where you bring it back up and discuss and see how successful it's been. And invite us back. That's the only thing I really have is I had wished that you had all brought in some of us business owners to help develop this ordinance. And then you'd have had everybody supporting you. And we support you, don't get me wrong. And we love the chief of police.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else, please come forward. Please state your name and your city of residence.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Larry Connor. I live in Ellington. I am a current downtown business owner and a retired bartender of downtown for over 10 years, where I worked at night times, both weekdays and weekends. Just wanted to provide some information to you. the city of Bradenton, a few years ago, a study had come out that showed that Bradenton, among small cities across the entire country, had one of the top 10 most vibrant nightlifes. Okay, a really appealing quality for our city. And, you know, with any city that has a dynamic nightlife and is up and coming, you can expect that there are going to be issues. I mean, it's going to happen. And, you know, I have to say that in my more than a decade, I've been very happy with the BPD's responsiveness and resolution to issues that I had to deal with. I mean, they're really great. It was a good experience for me. And we've gone through these periods of time. So Bradenton is not like some terrible, really dangerous place, okay? We do have periods of time where we have issues like we're seeing right now. And we you know, as an employee, bartenders, employees downtown, the business owners, we maintained or tried to maintain a good communicative relationship with the police department. And commitments have been made, whether they were formal or informal, that more patrols, foot patrols would be around, and increased presence from the police, which, by the way, an increased presence from police, to me, the only people that it keeps away are the troublemakers, okay? People that want to be safe and in a safe environment, they don't mind having the police around. But because Bradenton isn't such a terrible place, over time, the issues fade, and then these increased patrols and things of that would go away, or they would end earlier in the night until, of course, some problems would pop up again. Now, the idea of this permit to allow bars to stay open after 12, I believe that it would be helpful. I believe that this could be a good thing. However, it doesn't fix the problem. A few years ago, there was a problem bar, the Old Main Pub, I'm sure you all remember, it used to be the oldest bar in town, had been considered a nuisance and was required to close early. And unfortunately for the bar across the street, which had just opened, Paddy Wagon's Pub, instead of that resolving the issue that was Old Main, those problems flowed over primarily into Paddy Wagon's Pub, as well as other bars around downtown, but primarily there. And they went through a lot of things to try and mitigate that, even to the extent of hiring off-duty officers to provide security. But even that wasn't enough, right? There were still problems there. And so my point in bringing this up is that I don't believe that the permitting is
Thank you.
a comprehensive solution. I just wanted.
All right, we're looking, anyone else wishing to speak?
If you would continue the ordinance so that small business owners could be a part of the process.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Please state your name and your city of residence. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Joseph Bennett. I am the owner and operator, Sarasota is where I live. I'm the owner and operator of Poor Decisions, Craft Tales, Bamboozer, and Market, coming here pretty shortly. I'm here today to request the city continue the ordinance for 4047 to a future meeting so that the city and the small business bar owners can meet to discuss permitting requirements, process, some of the costs you've already talked about, for the after midnight permit. I know I will be directly affected, as well as other bar owners. I understand the perceived increase in crime and violence occurring after midnight is a particular concern for the city. To be clear, I am also concerned about that. I'm not here to oppose the city doing a midnight permit. I'm simply asking the city to fully develop the process that the small business owner must follow to receive the after midnight permit and to confirm all of the financial requirements. I'm concerned that this ordinance does not provide the process to apply for and receive the after midnight permit, how long the process will take, and how much this will cost small business owners. The ordinance states that it will take effect after the second reading. Does that mean the alcohol beverage license is immediately affected? Can the city provide a small grace period for implementing this? I have staff who rely on income from alcohol beverage sales after midnight, which is primarily where most of their money is made, without knowing how quickly I can apply for and receive the after midnight permit. I can't tell them how long it will take them to make the same income that they've been currently making. I'm particularly concerned with the lack of cost estimated surrounding the additional security measures that may be required for the full discernment of the chief of police. I understand that it's a thing, and I support them actually. It's the city business impact estimate. It simply states the costs are on a case-by-case business and cannot be quantified at this point. The business impact statement states that the ordinance will affect 10 to 15 establishments. I asked the city, any of these establishments, about how this will affect their business. How will this financially impact them? Again, I'm not opposing the concept of the after midnight permit. I'm just concerned that this is being rushed through without fully vetting the process and cost of small business owners. Therefore, I respectfully request the city delay the adoption of the ordinance until the meeting with business owners like myself, so that we can have some certainty on the next step, timing, and cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Please state your name and your city of residence. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Nicole McInnes. I'm a land use and property rights attorney at Stearns Weaver Miller in Tampa. I also reside in Tampa. Here today representing Poor Decisions, Craft Tales, and Bamboozer in connection with Ordinance 4047. I fully understand why the city is implementing this measure, and I understand that this is the direction that you're taking. Not here to oppose the concept of this permit, but rather here to ask that you please fully develop this process so that all of these small business owners know exactly what they will be required to do to apply for and receive this permit. And specifically what I mean to that effect is the ordinance is set to take effect as soon as second reading is over. Is this something that the small business owners can apply for the permit tomorrow? Has the form been developed? Do we know what staff will be implementing this? Do we know how long it will take for us to get a decision? Do we know how long it will take for the chief of police and her department to come up with the policy and procedure guide for the criteria to determine the weapons system detection, the ID scanners, the additional law enforcement who may be present? Do we know all of those things that small businesses will be directly affected tomorrow? So I'm really here today to ask that the city consider and adopt those processes prior to implementing this, because it will dramatically affect these business owners. As Joe mentioned, the business impact statements, this was required as part of 2023 bill by Florida statutes to require this business impact statement. And it's because local governments have been adopting ordinances on various other matters that were adversely affecting small business owners. In the small business owner in that bill, they said that local governments need this business impact statement so they can fully assess the direct compliance costs with an ordinance. Your ordinance does not contain these direct compliance costs. It says they'll be assessed on a case-by-case basis, and then that they will they're not able to quantify what those costs are. This is not consistent with Florida law, and there is an attorney's fees provision for local governments that are sued, and ultimately, if a court rules against them on the ordinance, that there's an attorney's fees provision. Also just have some concerns with the ordinance and the way that this may adversely be affecting bar owners, because again, the process has not been developed. There's things in there like if there's any code violations that the bars cannot have the after midnight permit. As you know, many of these bars are in old buildings. So does that mean that if they're legally conforming or non-conforming, that they still would be subject to scrutiny on this after midnight permit? Parking is required. I'm not sure why parking would be relevant to this type of application. Again, I know the mayor has brought up the fees, but what are the application fees? Are there fees for the chief of police to be reviewing items? Are there fees for the metal detection systems, for having off-duty officers? What kind of fees are we looking at for this type of process? Is there a limit on these fees, that how much can be imposed on these bar owners? What kinds of conditions can be imposed on the bar owners? When will a hearing officer be hired by the city to administer these applications? These bar owners, they do have a right to continue operating their bar. They have been operating, they have rights to do this. We're just asking that you fully develop the process.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Perry?
Mayor, I've been inspired by Mr. Bennett and Attorney Miller. I think she raises good points to the extent of this extended hours privilege is what a local preference privilege raises a great deal of issues. And I think that Mr. Bennett inspired me from his interest in the cost to the city. And when I look at the cost, the one thing that wasn't talked about is the cost of all that police presence that's downtown constantly, and the overtime and the equipment and the like. And I also think about the cost of the image to the city, because I always thought metal detectors should be at the end of a prison or an airport, not a place where you go in with a family to have a nice time. I look at the cost as it relates to police officer safety. When I see video like that and the jeopardy and fear I have and the cost that Chief Bevan talked about, I think you have gone bent over backwards to accommodate the better part of 4 to 5 bars. And I think the taxpayers are paying for it. I think the city's investments in downtown are paying for it. And I think that when we look at the analysis that was put to us by Mr. Bennett and his attorney, why would we want to get into litigation? The easiest thing for you to do is to say it ends at midnight. That's what the state law says. Thank you.
Councilman Craner.
Thank you. Ms. McGinnis, Mr. Russo, Ms. McGinnis brought up a point about us not being in compliance, this ordinance potentially not being in compliance with Florida law. Are you able to opine on that?
Well, there is a number of issues. I think, to her point, the ordinance does not address this period when the owners would be required to come in and get a permit. I think everybody understands that there would be a grace period involved in that, but doesn't specifically lay that out. Excuse me.
We can add a grandfather period.
We could add a period of time to which they would need to come in and apply for the permit if they were currently operating. Things like that could be added to the ordinance if we wanted to clarify that. In terms of the business impact estimate, it is an estimate. That is a new statute, so again, that's going to be something that is up for interpretation. But I mean, I think her position is that the city didn't do enough to try to estimate those costs. I think what we did is compliant with the statute, but there could be arguments both ways.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as Mr. Perry said, there may be some legitimate things that need to be worked out, and I'm really more in favor of just, let's go ahead and set something now. I'd be comfortable with alcohol sales until 1 o'clock, and then you can keep your restaurant or your establishment open, but you can't be serving any alcohol. And it allows time for people to eat and maybe sober up. Stay open till 2, but stop alcohol sales at 1 o'clock. And then we can work through the rest if they want to, go through an administrative special permit. But I feel like right now we've got to do something, and that's my opinion. I'd like to see us do that instead.
Ms. Barnaby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're being asked to do something. We've been asked by other business owners, we've been asked by citizens that recognize that what they are seeing in their downtown is not what they want to see. So we're being asked to do something, and at times like this, it kind of makes me feel like I get turned into the hall monitor. Because certain businesses aren't being responsible. I don't like being put in this position. But I asked for this job. I love serving people. And when people ask me about the job, and they'll say, what's the worst part of it? You're like, if you have to raise taxes, or if you have to tell somebody they can't build something, and I not for me. The worst part of this job is if I have to go to a funeral for a police officer, a firefighter, one of our public works employees, any employee that we have at the city, because I know how hard these people work and how they wouldn't do this job if they didn't love this community. But when we lose a public safety employee because of someone's irresponsibility and poor choices, that's when I don't like my job. We're being asked to have people be responsible with their business. I don't think we should have to do that. I think if you have a business, you should be proud to operate it, and you should be proud that you're in the city of Bradenton. Yeah, it's my hometown. Yeah, I'm probably going to be buried here. But we need business owners that have civic pride and want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Not because some little old lady sits up here and tells you, no, you can't have a drink after midnight. And I find it very frustrating that we get put in this position because of irresponsible behavior on the act of a few.
So the chair will entertain a motion and see if we get a second, and then we'll go into further discussion.
Well, I move to table this until our next city council meeting, and so that we can address the policy.
Ms. Moore, you're not recognized at this time.
Sorry.
Ms. Barnaby had the floor.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to pass ordinance 4047 with the understanding that there will be a grace period of up to 35 days. And I'm also going to request that we change the time limit to 2 a.m.
I'll second that.
All right, and can we put in that there would be no fee for the permit at the beginning? So it would basically be net neutral
For any existing,
for existing businesses.
Businesses.
Right.
at this time. I will accept that friendly amendment if the seconder will.
second.
Okay, discussion, Ms. Moore?
I was intending to ask Mr. Rudisil whether or not, if we tabled it to the next meeting, we had any, whether that was permitted as far as notice and time with the hearings and whatnot. But before you ask that, before you answer that question, I will also just say that it might be a good idea to include some reference to a policy to be developed in that interim that addresses some concerns regarding costs.
Cost for the future.
Right, and also whether we want to have any review by any staff, including city administrator or planning, as far as urban design or planning factors, given that we're making a determination about what has to be required, and whether or not you would like to consider including a sunset provision.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I think our job as the policymakers is to pass the ordinance and then to get with the police department. They're going to be the ones that are gonna have the operating procedures. They're gonna be the ones that are gonna have to bring all of that. And I think that if you have a problem when they bring it forward, that's when we need to address it. Personally, that's just my opinion.
Mr. Kramer?
I was going to say much the same. The city doesn't get in the habit of we set policy, we set ordinance. We don't set department policies. Departments set those policies. The chief and her staff, everyone's putting this on the chief. The chief is just like when we go into a state of emergency, the sheriff is the law enforcement executive for the county. The police chief, whoever that police chief is the public safety, no offense to fire, but in this situation, is the public safety person we're going to look to handle this matter. A committee of one is not a committee of just the chief, it's a committee of the chief's staff who's going to put together, she's not going to be the one sitting there reviewing everything by herself, she's going to review it with staff. Trust me, I know. It's going to be done that way because it's a consensus. Captain Thiers is also one of the people who's been out there and has been on that street. Sergeant Cerniglia has been on that street. I have been on that street and had to call for all officers to come be down there because you're back to back with your partner officer because the crowd's coming in on you. To see it happening just downtown, there's a lot of focus on it just being downtown right now. This is a citywide issue. We haven't had just shootings downtown. We had shootings out east, which then, if you have a downtown issue, you had this issue down where somebody breaks into nursing home, for goodness sakes. Then you're fighting a two-fronted war. In the meantime, a deputy gets shot because he's got to come help us because we're dealing with a crowd that, no offense, is a crowd that doesn't care about the law. That issue happened at 2:15, the video 2:12 to 2:15. And Captain Thayer said it was 3:15, 3:30 before the crowd was gone. What's the crowd got to do but stand around and gawk and start more fights and keep arguing? They need to get the hell out. That's all I got to say for now.
Councilman Coker?
Yeah, I just, I'd like to somehow address, okay, 35 days, but even if we don't have that permit process nailed down in 35 days, can we have some change? I just don't want to see this drag out. And we've seen this with other ordinances that required permits and stuff, that it takes a long time to implement it. And so I want to see us affect change now. And that's just my big concern.
But I'm just going to start talking here. That's what we're doing. We're voting on this to make that change happen now.
But you're
we're
saying
not-
that you're
what we-
grandfathering, so there's not really any change. If every single thing will remain the same until that permit is issued,
Within
then,
the 35 days. You got to give them.
so what happens at 35 days?
If they don't have a permit, they're closed at midnight.
Okay, even if we're not ready.
No, we're going to be ready.
Okay.
This ordinance will go into effect when we pass it.
Right.
There will be a 35-day grace period, as I understand, right?
I just
That
want to make
allows
sure,
people
even
to
if
s-
we're not ready, I want it to go into effect.
If I may, what I would suggest, and help me out here, I think once the ordinance passes today, I think that the terms insofar as the criminal violations that would be associated with a greater look at the police department should start, right? So if there's a sexual battery happens, a homicide, I think those criminal requirements associated with it should begin today. But back to my point, we want to see this as a successful event. When we push this out, it is citywide. We want to work with our business owners. We want to educate. We want to do SEPTAD studies. We want to get all that out of the way when that permit gets issued. 35 days is a bit aggressive when we're talking about citywide. To get all that, we will work very hard, but I don't know that that necessarily matters as long as you trust that we will do our education period. We will personally meet with every bar within the city. We'll take a quick look that says, you're gonna get this permit here. We haven't even come up, it's actually the city administrator and the police department who determines the permitting process and how they're gonna go through that with planning. What I would ask is you allow those criminal sanctions to start today, and as of today, those could be looked at when the permitting begins. So it's not really a grace period, but then it gives everybody time if we want to say, hey, let's get some cameras and whatnot, and you have 15 days to apply, and here's the process. I think we do want to have a procedure.
But nobody's going to be closed at midnight.
Absolutely not. And I want to make sure that Cork understands these are violations that not just after midnight. This is 24/7. If violations that are listed and enumerated in the ordinance happen, that's whenever they're open. So if there's disorderly conduct, if there's arrest, if there's
Continued over.
Yep, right, correct, over and over and over. We're going to work hard to achieve a successful outcome. Our goal is to work with our business owners, let them make money, let us not have to be out there all the time dealing with issues or problems. And I think if we do this the right way, we can accomplish this. This is the right way. Start it today, but give the police department a chance during the next 30 to 60 days to develop a good process that everybody feels good about, an education period, work with our officers, and we can make it happen.
So when are you going to have in effect that no bars are open after 2 a.m.?
Well, today, right? As long as you vote.
I don't know. That's what I'm questioning.
Well, if I could, Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple questions, and I want to get to that issue as well. So I think in terms of the grace period, I think what probably makes the most sense is to have a period of time within which they have to apply for the permit. Because they don't really have control over what happens after that. It's on the city to go through the process of doing it. So, period of time for which existing owners would have to make application.
While still staying open till 2 a.m.
Yes. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about making the 2 a.m. switch today because the ordinance was not noticed for that type of change. We noticed it as an after midnight permit, you know, between the hours of midnight and 2:30. We haven't noticed it as limiting all alcohol sales to 2 a.m. So if we want to make that change, I would suggest that we continue the meeting, renotice it for that change. And I know you're not going to like that, but you know, I think that would be the most prudent course if we're gonna cut the hours back.
How long does that have to be noticed?
We could get that notice in and bring it back to the next meeting.
Can we do it sooner?
We can certainly look at that and check those timeframes, see what we could do, if you wanted to.
And would that, Chief, give opportunity to have everything ready if we waited 2 weeks?
I've got a large staff, we'll work hard, but again, we have to work with the city as well to.
I think what we're trying to do is come up with some tools, basically, and provide PD enough time to look at the contours of the permit. And as Mr. Rudisell pointed out, currently existing, there's a 2:30 provision, and that wasn't noticed. And so if we can get it back to the next meeting, what it would effectively do is at that point you could implement it, and then the time deadline becomes 2 a.m. once it's implemented. But that doesn't mean that that's going to give enough time to PD to basically take each and every application and authorize it for the extension. I would think that's what they have to look at. And I think the way it's written is, one of the things the PD could say is, if you have a bad, first off, you're on the shot clock, that once it passes, then the chief and the chief staff can take every incident thereafter and look at it. I think that's the point she was trying to make, as a predicate for why things have to be modified, basically. And I think the modification could include even shutting hours down, potentially, a recommendation to less than 2 o'clock in there for officer safety or other community safety things. So it's a good tool. And it could be modified if it isn't included in the current ordinance to include that, which we may want to do. But I think we have to provide the chief enough time to process those applications. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I would imagine something slightly more than 30 days, 60 days probably.
But everything would still be in order at the next meeting if it passes.
And it would also give the bar owners some opportunity to change their operational practices if required, to basically modify it, and to talk with staff from the police department as well.
And this is maybe not to you all, but to the folks sitting behind me. We've taken a look at all of our calls for service over the past 12 months in relation to the ordinance. And I will tell you, on its surface, the events thus far, there is not one bar owner who would be suspended for sales after midnight currently. Maybe that can put some folks at ease. We've looked at all the calls for service. I think there's this perception that we're picking out a few bars, and there's some close ones there. There's some people that would certainly be on our radar, and we would say, look, you're getting close. You need to change a few practices and procedures, and here's what we're going to suggest, because the next time, here's what's going to happen. But currently, as it stands, with a review, there is not one bar who would be denied a permit. Every single bar would be getting a permit right now. So
I'm going to ask the question then, Chief. Do we have, and maybe Captain Thiers would have to answer this, have we had bars selling to underage or minorities?
Sure.
Minors.
Yeah, we've had
Not minorities.
Minors. What'd I say?
Lots of minorities.
Minors.
Minors. Yes, we've been running a few operations that have shown that's commonplace in every city. We strive to.
Have we had drug buys downtown?
Sure.
in bars? Have bartenders been selling drugs out of bars?
Sure.
So I am now for looking at this in a different way and maybe adding to this ordinance. So, you know, and some things that if that's happening, so if that happens with this ordinance right now, are we able to do any more?
It depends on how often, how many times. This ordinance isn't the cure-all, save-all. It gives us some solid things based on some criminal activity, but it's looking more at repeated criminal activity,
Right.
not one-time events.
But I think there is, as we heard of a previous bar, that it took a long time to take care of it that was there. And is there a way to strengthen this ordinance to stop that if it continues to happen? Because we knew at one time a bouncer was selling at a bar drugs and was arrested and spent time in jail for that. And it took how long for that to happen?
I think that this ordinance
But would the bar have been closed down if the bouncer that they actually hired is selling drugs to, you know, he's the one that's the fox guarding the hen house? So there may be some things that this might be a little bit of a good delay now, because I think we need to look at that and add some of those things to it. Mr. Rudisell?
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to note, as an option, the council could adopt the ordinance today with some of the changes that we talked about, the grace period and the fee waiver, anything else that the council wants to put in there today. And then we could bring back another ordinance right behind it
For 2 o'clock.
for 2 o'clock.
Okay. And if we want to add
And anything else that we decide.
Good.
All right. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
on the advice of counsel, I want to make sure I get this correct, that I would like to amend my initial motion to go back to the 2:30 time period. But I'm doing it with the understanding that we are going to look at a 2 o'clock, or,
Bringing back another.
right, a 2 a.m. closing time.
As well as looking at other options.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. And just to clarify, because you had indicated a 35-day grace period, now we're talking about a time frame to make an application. Would you keep that at 35 days to make the application? And maybe this is a question for staff as to when they think they can.
I would like to see something done. I'm with Ms. Coker. I said, I originally had 45 days. I wasn't sure I'd get support on that, so I knocked it back to 35 days. But hearing what the chief has said, Chief, what is that?
60 days.
Is it 60 days? Is that what you would be more comfortable with?
Now, to be clear, I think that 60 days is for the PD to process those applications. Is that?
Somebody step forward, please, because
Yeah.
I'd like to remind the council, this is citywide. So it's not just the 7 bars downtown. This affects a lot. So it's a lot of legwork on our end, especially with the SEPTED studies and some of the suggestions, because this ordinance is a blanket ordinance for the entire city. And you talk about alcohol sales to minors and narcotic sales. We target citywide, not just downtown.
But we're talking about making application, not that the permit is
Right.
issued.
But I believe that there's many businesses that aren't even aware this is happening outside of downtown. So we want to make sure we do our due diligence to get that information out so they're aware that this is
so
coming.
Captain, are you more comfortable with 60 days?
I am, yes, ma'am.
Do I hear 50?
60?
And just for clarification, 60 days to be issued by the police department or 60 days to be put in through the applicants? We need to have clarity on that.
Well, foremost, and correct me if I'm wrong, the permit is not issued by us. It's in conjunction with city administration.
And I was going to make that point as well, that we may need administration to weigh in on when they think they can have an application available if we adopt this people won't be able to go in tomorrow and fill out an application, so that's part of the question.
I think our goal would be to touch every business, make it clear what the ordinance is, what we would like to see, and give them the opportunity to apply for the permit within 60 days. You know, by that time, we'll say, hey, you have a 15-day turnaround on this. If that 15-day turnaround goes beyond, it's still going to be, they'll be educated, they'll know that they have to comply within 15 days, and that all will happen within the next 60 days.
Mr. Kramer?
I'm good with that, so yes, but I just want to, because there's two parts to the 2:30. There's consumption on premises, which I think is what we're really saying 2 o'clock to, but there's also consumption off premises, so like a convenience store. That's that one was to remain 2:30 as well. Do we want them both to be 2? Or I'm okay with the other ones being 2:30, because for the most part, they're gonna be taking it home.
At this point in time, the maker of the motion is going with legal counsel saying 2:30. I think addressing it at 2 is when we bring that back, and then that's
Okay.
when we have that discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I think we've got it clarified. And Mr.
Yep.
Russo?
Well, and just to make sure I'm clear, so what we will include is a provision that, which won't be codified, but provides a 60-day grace period for establishments to make application. And then we're also adding a provision that would waive the fees for the existing establishments.
In that time period. Not forever. If they don't get it done in a time period,
Well, they have to do it in the time period anyway, so yes, understood.
Or
Yep.
or else.
all right.
Okay.
We've had discussion. The motion is made. We'll start the vote in Ward 4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. Thank you. We're going to take a recess until 10:30. Thank you.
Item 7A is the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 4040. An ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, vacating a portion of a platted 40-foot wide right-of-way as shown on the plat of Adams Annex to Bradenton subdivision, recorded in Book 1, page 158 of the Public Records of Manatee County, Florida, and more particularly described herein, being generally located south of Manatee Avenue West, east of 3rd Street West, north of 8th Avenue Drive West, and west of 2nd Street West, providing for recordation in the official records, providing for severability, and providing for ordinances in conflict, and providing for an effective date.
And can we read all of these together? Because virtually,
If you want to read them all and open them up for the same public hearing, I don't have an objection to that. We just take separate motions when we get to them.
all right. Madam Clerk?
Item B is ordinance 4041. An ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, vacating a portion of a platted 60-foot wide right-of-way as shown on the plat of Roche's subdivision, recorded in Book 1, page 142 of the Public Records of Manatee County, Florida, and more particularly described herein, being generally located south of Manatee Avenue West, east of 2nd Street West, north of 8th Avenue Drive West, and west of 1st Street, providing for recordation in the official records, providing for severability, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you.
Ordinance 4042, an ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, vacating a portion of a platted 15-foot wide alley as shown on the plat of Roche's subdivision, recorded in Book 1, page 142 of the Public Records of Manatee County, Florida, and more particularly described herein, being generally located south of Manatee Avenue West, east of 3rd Street West, north of 8th Avenue Drive West, and west of 2nd Street West, providing for recordation in the official records, providing for severability, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. And then can you do 24,
Oh, I'm
40,
sorry.
46?
Sorry about that. Ordinance 4046, an ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, vacating an 8-foot wide portion of 8th Avenue West, South Street, as shown on the plat of Black Bear Park subdivision, recorded in Book 1, page 283 of the Public Records of Manatee County, Florida, and more particularly described herein, being generally located south of Manatee Avenue West, east of 3rd Street West, north of 8th Avenue Drive West, and west of 2nd Street West, providing for recordation in the official records, providing for severability, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, Mr. DeLong, can you give us the explanation?
All right, thank you, Ms. Melton, on doing that. Greg DeLong, Assistant Director, Planning Community Development. Thank you for allowing us to combine all 4 of these cases together, as they are for one overall project, which will be the new police headquarters building. Here's just a location map defining where each one of these proposed vacations are located of right-of-way or easements. You can see there's the 4 of them listed on the map. Here is a zoning map. This area is completely zoned T5, which is in our form-based code area. The applicant, which is the city, this planning staff has approved the plans for the form-based code and for the new police headquarters, so that's good news. So this thing can start moving forward. Future land use is UCBD, again, showing where all the right-of-ways and easements are located. The first case is Ordinance 4040. Again, this is at 705 3rd Street West. It is a little bit over 7,600 square feet, this vacation area, or 0.18 acres. It is currently a vacant lot. As mentioned, it is to vacate a 40-foot right-of-way. This, again, as mentioned, is for the police headquarters. It is, as I mentioned already, is a vacant lot, and utility companies have already signed off on the proposed request. Here is a survey of the area on the left-hand side of your screen, and the site plan on the right-hand side. And here is a photo of the site as it is today. The next case is Ordinance 4041. This is at 707 2nd Street West. This area is a little bit larger at approximately 19,000 square feet or 0.44 acres. This currently has the Bradenton Public Works water system facility on it. This is a 60-foot right-of-way. It is cutting through the property at 707 2nd Street West. Here is the survey map on the left showing the survey of the property, and on the right-hand side you can see the area being vacated as it goes through one of the water tanks. Here is the existing conditions from a photo looking to the east. The next case is ordinance 4042, and this is at 704 2nd Street West. This is approximately 2,851 square feet or 0.07 acres. Again, this has the public works facility and water system facility on it. This is a 15-foot wide right-of-way or alley that is on the property. Here on the left-hand side, again, is a survey. Right-hand side shows the area to be vacated. And here are some photos from that property. It is pretty much where the driveway is, behind the gate. And the last case is ordinance 4046, and this is at 800 2nd Street West. This is an unimproved street, unlike the other cases ahead that we heard. This is approximately 927 square feet or 0.02 acres. It is currently, as I mentioned, an unimproved street with no curb, gutter, storm system. It consists of sand and rock surface right now. Looking at the request, it does not appear that it's going to negatively impact traffic patterns on the subject road network over there, and all utility companies have also signed off on this one. Here on the left-hand side is a survey of the area. Right-hand side shows a better aerial of that, and here are some photos of that subject area. As you can see, it's an unimproved street that is being used, and there is the area to be vacated. And looking at the land use regulations, we look at section 2.2.7. It does appear everything is met. Letters were submitted by all utility companies stating they have no utilities in the subject portions of right-of-way to be vacated. And it also does comply with objective 1.5 of the comprehensive plan. Considering this area is already built upon or they're unused right-of-way, it appears it does meet the comp plan on being able to be vacated. City Council is encouraged to evaluate the request based on the provided application materials as well as staff input, the applicant, and the public, and based on its decision on section 2.2.7 of the land use regulations. Planning Commission did meet on May 15th about these 4 subject cases and did vote by a vote of 6-0 for each one of the cases to recommend approval to City Council. And that is all I've got.
Any questions? All right, and we'll open the public hearing for all 4. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and as Mr. Rudisell said, we'll take a motion on ordinance 4040 first.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
motion to approve ordinance 4040.
All right. Second by Ms. Barnaby. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 5.
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. Moving on to motion 4040. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion
4041.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 4041.
Second.
Second.
All right, I have Ms. Coker and then Ms. Coachman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5.
Yes.
Approved 5-0. Moving on to 4042.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
move to approve ordinance 4042.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Ms. Barnaby, a second by Ms. Coachman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, start the vote in Ward 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. And then ordinance 4046.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose that we approve ordinance 4046.
By Mr. Kramer,
Yes. Second.
by Ms. Coker. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2.
Yes.
Approved 5-0. Madam Clerk.
Item 7E is the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 4048, an ordinance of the city of Bradenton, Florida, vacating a platted 20-foot alley as shown on the re-subdivision of lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, Turner's Plat of Bradentown, recorded in Plat Book 1, page 184 of the Public Records of Manatee County, Florida, and more particularly described herein. Generally located north of 3rd Avenue West, east of 12th Street West, and west of 10th Street West. providing for recordation in the official records, providing for severability, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Mr. DeLong.
Back again. Greg DeLong, Assistant Director, Planning and Community Development. I'm starting to feel like I'm the right-of-way guy all of a sudden. Again, this is for a redevelopment opportunity. This is for the City Hall Police Complex here at 101 12th Street West. This vacation is a little bit over 6,000 square feet, or 0.1389 acres. This is a 20-foot wide alley that it currently exists. It does cut through the parking lot, starts over by the trash receptacle area, runs south through the parking garage, and ends at 3rd Avenue West. In this same application, all utility companies have signed off on the proposed request. And as I mentioned, this is to vacate the property to clean it up for future redevelopment opportunities. Here is a location map showing where the current alleyway is located. As you can see, it does dissect through the parking garage that is south of City Hall. And here is a zoning map. We are Zone T6 here, and we are in the urban core future land use designation. Here is just a boundary survey kind of showing where the alleyway is located. As I mentioned, it cuts through the parking lot, running from where the trash receptacles are south to 3rd Avenue West. And here's just a sketch and legal description. Here are some photos looking at the existing conditions. I don't know if the intent when they built the parking garage was for the alley to cut through it, but there is a entryway for the hotel there, and it heads towards Mr. Perry and Ms. Coachman's parking spot on the north. So they are in the alleyway. Again, we look at section 2.2.7 of the land use regulations. It appears everything is met, including all letters being submitted by utility companies. And also we look at section or objective 1.5 of the comprehensive plan for right-of-way preservation in the city. And based on the fact we have a parking garage on this current alleyway and a parking lot, it appears that the alleyway and right-of-way are not needed. So again, City Council is encouraged to evaluate the requests on all the information provided by staff, the public, and under section 2.2.7 of the land use regulations. And Planning Commission did meet on July 17th to discuss this and voted 5-0 to approve or recommend approval of ordinance 4048. And that is all I've got.
All right. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll go to the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve ordinance 4048.
All right. Any further, second? All right. Any further discussion?
I just want to say this because I don't usually get to say anything like this. I wasn't here when the parking garage was built. Neither was Councilwoman Moore, Councilwoman Coachman, Councilwoman Coker, or Councilman Kramer.
No council people were there.
Can you please tell us why they didn't do this when they built the garage?
Mr. Perry?
Mr. Perry wasn't here either.
Hearing no further discussion. In Ward 4.
I actually asked that question to David Cronkite, who's our surveyor.
Microphone.
I'm sorry. And Mr. Cronkite actually kind of had the same question. I don't know why it wasn't vacated back then.
We're looking forward, not back.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds wanted to know, that's all.
As you know, half that parcel was underwater when it was originally platted.
Oh,
And the
originally.
bridge, of course, was
Yeah.
considerably to the west of where it's currently located.
Start the vote in Ward 4.
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. Madam Clerk?
Item 7G is the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 4049. An ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, amending Chapter 70, Article 3, Section 70-86 of the city's Code of Ordinances to add definitions. Amending Chapter 70, Article 3, Section 70-92 of the city's Code of Ordinances to add new sections 70-92D, 70-92E, 70-92F, 70-92G, 70-92H, and 70-92I, requiring private laterals and private wastewater collection and transmission systems to be maintained by the property owner in good working order. requiring private lateral and private wastewater collection and transmission inspections upon certain occurrences, providing inspection requirements, requiring the property owner to replace or rehabilitate defective private laterals, requiring, the owner or operator of a private wastewater collection and transmission system to repair or rehabilitate such systems to abate excessive inflow and infiltration, providing for enforcement of mechanisms, providing for codification, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, whose staff can speak to this?
Mayor, I think I can probably take that.
Yeah, either me or Rob, probably.
And maybe Scott can fill in the blanks. A little bit from the policy background. When we entered into the consent decree, there was a provision that the city would visit and draft a private lateral ordinance. One of the reasons why is that it deals with inflow and infiltration. Fairly timely in light of last couple of weeks' storm event and the overwhelming inflow and infiltration of our wastewater collection system that ultimately leads to our wastewater treatment plant. What this does is it basically takes that portion that comes from our collection system itself that are typically in the street that move through a series of lift stations to master lift stations and then are forced mained to the collection plant. Typically, without rainwater and saturation, we operate at about 7 million gallons per day, between 6 and 7. When you have a storm like we have, the I&I comes from a multitude of different sources. It comes from private laterals that we're discussing today, which are pipes basically would go, again, from our collection system in the roadway up to the main drain of a residence or commercial structure. And then there's, of course, our collection system, which is the transmission collection and the lift stations and the manholes. Just to give some numbers to that, from a normal day of 7 million a day, basically, we experienced 27 million at the peak of the storm. The vast majority of that comes in through the I&I process, that excess. And it comes through a variety of different sources that I've just kind of delineated. In the consent decree, it requires that we remediate those things. We do them in different ways. We do them through our own collection system through a pipelining program that you're probably familiar with. We've talked about it for several of the last 3 years. Right now, we under the decree, we have a target of 320,000 linear feet of pipe that needs to be lined. And that infrastructure of the city consists of clay pipes that are very corrosive, cast iron, and really in the more newer areas of the city, if you go out to Tidewater and some other places, that's when the code required PVC, and they did away with those corrosives. And so those pipes are in better shape for sure. And so now we have to tackle this, which is the provisions that deal with the private laterals. Of particular importance in this piece of legislation is going to be section 7092, subsection E, that deals with private lateral inspections. And really what it says is within 30 days of the following occurrence of any of the following things, that the private lateral has to be inspected and, if necessary, repaired. So all of that depends basically on a building permit application for the improvement of property that meets any of the following conditions. And they're going to be conditions that deal with work that would alter or expand components of the building collection system that flow into the private lateral and the city sewer system where the volume would be substantially increased. The reason why I'm taking some details to explain that to you is that minor things that don't increase volume, like just changing out a shower, some minor pipe improvements, maybe a single vanity to a double vanity, maybe even adding a bathroom, but having the same number of bedrooms, would not substantially increase the volume that's necessary. So it wouldn't trigger this. That's all going to be dependent on the building department's determination. There's other provisions in there that would require work that involves a repair, altercation, or improvement to the private lateral itself, that you'll inspect it to make sure it's working. If it's over 70 square feet, as far as new space to the structure. If it's an open and obvious condition, if we see it bubbling out, rippling out, or a neighbor sees it and they call building, the planning department, building safety, or code, or whoever, those are the things that would trigger an inspection and, if necessary, a repair. The reason why we tried to limit it to that is that although we have to clean up our I&I problems within the private land ownership of homeowners and commercial landowners, we don't want to be overly onerous on them, meaning that, you know, everybody needs to inspect it within a period of time, and if repaired is necessary, then to repair it. The initial bill that was submitted to us was from the water keepers themselves, and it was a great deal more onerous. When a home was sold, it had to be basically inspected and thereafter basically repaired if necessary. Other types of any sort of plumbing improvement at all would have to require us to inspect the private lateral. We experienced this with backflow preventers many years ago, that it's part of the process that has to go through the building permit, that sometimes we have to check to make sure that the backflow preventer is in place and operating. And so we think this is a good compromise. The language of the consent decree itself is fairly vague, and we were able to try to basically strike a balance that would improve I&I through private laterals, and at the same time not impose an overly burdensome or onerous cost and responsibility on the landowners. Again, when you look at Bradenton as a built-out city, the more modern areas probably do not have these types of problems. The older areas are ones where it's substantial. We do the pipelining on our own pipes, making significant investments. We need our residents to do the same. That's the short version.
Questions, Mr. Perry? Mr. Russo?
Well, if that's a short version,
Yeah, I'd hate to see the long one.
No, the only thing I would add is it also includes private wastewater collection systems. We have some of those in the city as well, so it's not just the private laterals where you might have from like a single-family home. Also includes those facilities that might have their own more substantial collection system. Could be an apartment complex or a different type of facility. But otherwise, yes, I think Mr. Perry covered it, unless there are any questions for me.
Well, I think, I don't know if we have anybody here who's going to talk today when we get to public hearing, but I think a lot of us and people even in the public might want to say, well, what does that mean? Well, I bought a house in 1988 on 32nd Street that was built in the 40s. The plumbing had been completely replaced in the house, and within a couple of years, we were having sewage back up in our house. Well, the lateral from the edge where they replaced it with all PVC to the sidewalk where it hooked into the city line, the sidewalk always had a dip in it. So what happened was finally from my property to the city line had finally collapsed. It was clay pipe. Well, we didn't know what was going on. We thought something was wrong with the city, but it actually was mine, and I had to replace that that was about 25, 30 feet. It wasn't a long way, but from where they had stopped and went. Never had another issue, and we put out a flush out and all that. So those are the things that, ultimately homeowners are going to have issues anyway if it's collapsing and letting the water just go right in. There literally was one area under the sidewalk where there was this big of a hole going to the city line with nothing there other than just the cavity in the ground. So the pipes had just corroded and gone away, and then never had another sidewalk issue because it fixed it, because it was just always seeping. So, it's not something that and I like the way we're getting it done. On a major project, something you're going to do, you're going to have to check it. But just because you're selling your house or doing those things, it's not always, or replacing a small item. When you get the backflows, anytime you did anything, you had to put a backflow in, which sometimes made it cost prohibitive to do what you were doing. Any other questions before I go to public hearing?
Just in addition to Mr. Russo's comments, we have 65 lift stations within the city, and we have 4 major lift stations that move the much higher volumes. There's 32 private lift stations, at these apartment complexes, condominiums, and other things. They're responsible for the maintenance of those themselves. That's the distinction with a private lift station, but ultimately the flow comes into our system.
Do we have any jurisdiction of checking the flow when we had a storm like this? That we know it's normally X number of flow on an average daily basis, now it's more than tripled or gone up?
At the private lift stations?
Right.
I think we have authority to do that, yes, because it comes into our system. I'm
Because
pretty
if-
sure we do.
Right, because that could show where there was a lot of excess stormwater getting in it too.
Right, and I would imagine it probably did in some of the older ones. You know, where I'm at, we have a private system. It's newer, but with that kind of flow, it still could have contributed. Yep.
All right, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 4049.
Move to approve ordinance 4049.
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 5.
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Item 8A is water treatment plant emergency repair expenditure.
Who's going to talk about that today?
You want to take it, Mr. Williams? Been handling this thing pretty closely. You don't talk as long as I do, so.
He doesn't think he gets paid by the word.
Doesn't have a law degree.
I am a man of few words, so. Last year, well, actually earlier this year, it was discovered that we had some emergency piping that needed to be done and repairs that needed to be done in our water treatment plant. Had we not done it, it would have impacted the entire city. So Mr. Perry, myself, Ms. Clayback, we met with Woodruff and Sons, had reviewed what needed to be repaired, what repairs were done in the past, looking at futuristic repairs to say, what can we do today to make sure that we don't have to worry about this again in the future? The biggest impact was a chemical injection point. So what we did was we replaced the piping, moved the chemical injection point so we don't have to deal with this problem again. Essentially, it was causing a buildup of I don't know how to describe it, like a calcium buildup is the best way to describe it, and essentially causing turbidity in the pipe. And had we not fixed it, it would have closed off the pipe eventually. And
That pipe is the main water source from
Correct.
the water treatment
Can
plant.
you put this on the Elmo so that the audience can see the magnitude of what you're talking about, please? Thank you.
I can put it up. I have it.
That's what she's getting ready to put up, yeah.
Okay.
I believe this was also included in a budget transfer request that we did.
Oh, this was on this, yeah.
so, first of all, a disclaimer on the picture. This was actually a picture of the last time they did the repair, which was in 2017 timeframe. So, what you're looking at is, instead of making the proper adjustments, unfortunately back then, we did a quick fix, got the line back and operating, and had no problems until recent. So we got what we did, again, we sat down and holistically looked at what can we do now to prevent having to do this again in the future. We had an initial estimate, I want to say it was around 800,000. I believe they came in just under 700,000 to get it fixed. But the good news is the main water supply line is repaired. It's fixed. We've moved the chemical injection point. So again, we don't have to deal with this issue in the future. And that problem has been solved.
So what are you asking for today?
So today we're asking for, really it's just it was more of an informational emergency purchase that we're bringing back to council to let you know that back in March we had this discussion. They just finished the project recently. And we're just letting you know that the project is complete and it was procured under an emergency basis. And that's about it. So,
Questions? Anything else?
No, sir.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yep. All right, Mr. Perry, unfinished business?
I think we have to pass, we have to, there's a
Do we need a
motion.
motion for it?
Is there a motion attached to it?
Yes.
Under mine.
So at this point in time, I will move for approval of the expenditure related to the emergency repair on the main water line for the city of Bradenton.
Second.
I don't think it's necessary, but I think it was included in the cover page.
Mr. Perry?
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at the cover page. I actually didn't think it was necessary, but I will certainly take one. Let's do that. That's good. Yep.
All right, so we have a motion to approve moving forward with the Public Works and Utilities explanation that Mr. Williams did, so, by Ms. Barnaby and seconded by Mr. Kramer. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 1.
Yes.
2?
Yes.
3?
Yes.
4?
Yes.
5.
Yes.
Approved 5-0. Thank you. City Administration, Mr. Perry.
Item 9A is Resolution 2464 to approve the 24-25 CDBG Annual Action Plan.
All right, discussion?
Mayor, Ms. Taylor, and
Microphone?
I'm sorry, Ms. Taylor and Ms. Skelding and her staff are here to talk about this annual proposal that we put before you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, Mr. Perry, Mr. Rudisill, Nilsa Taylor, Administrative Services Director. Before you is the 2024-25 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. The city complied with all requirements as set forth by HUD. That included advertising, citizen input, public comment, and hearing. All comments were heard and addressed. And in addressing comments, we saw an opportunity to demonstrate how CDBG subrecipients leverage funds in the community. Amy Towery, Vice President of Development, and Kathy Bidding, Senior Director of Compliance and Reporting from Meals on Wheels Plus of Manatee, they're a CDBG subrecipient, has a quick presentation for us. Following the presentation, Ms. Skelding will provide an overview of the annual action plan. Thank you. Excuse me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here today. We are excited to tell you about Meals on Wheels Plus of Manatee and the many programs that we offer to benefit Manatee County residents. You should have a packet in front of you that includes a trifold brochure. Many people think of Meals on Wheels. They think of our home delivered meal program. That is the program where we would deliver meals to the homes of homebound seniors and disabled residents in Manatee County. But we are indeed Meals on Wheels Plus of Manatee, and that plus means that we have additional programs in addition to home delivered meals. The trifold brochure illustrates the 4 programs. In addition to home delivered meals, we also operate the Food Bank of Manatee, which is the only food bank based in our community and the largest hunger relief organization in Manatee County. We operate Daybreak Adult Day Center, which is a senior daycare center located in Lakewood Ranch. We're the only licensed and federally funded adult day center in our community. And we operate 5 Friendship Dining Center locations, which are for seniors who are mobile, able to get out, who are really would be home alone all day if it weren't for these programs that bring people together for friendship and companionship. So also included in the packet, our impact report for 2023. We provided nearly 278,000 meals through our home delivered meal program, over 3.4 million pounds of food through the Food Bank of Manatee, and volunteers in our community, including you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your support, committed 24,000 volunteer hours last year. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have about Meals on Wheels or our impact in the community, but really we wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for the support that you've given us through the CDBG grant. We provide home-delivered meals with that grant in packs of 5 and 7 to homebound seniors.
Any questions, council? Mr. Perry?
Mayor, just briefly, I think it's
Microphone.
I'm sorry. I think it's a fairly modest contribution we make through the grant in the order of about $20,000. And just want to say thank you so much for providing these services. And they're very meaningful, particularly for the city that doesn't operate social service programs like the county does and the state and the like. So it means a lot to us. And I know that Councilwoman Coker had some discussions, I think, and they were very positive from what we discussed. So I want you to know that we are, very appreciative, and also that we keep an eye on things, and all of our sub-grant recipients, we appreciate them keep giving us information.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
All right, we appreciate what you do, and I know that it's been growing, and being the plus part really makes a difference. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Amy and Kathy. Appreciate hearing more about the programs for Meals on Wheels Plus. I am Pam Skelding, and I'm the Housing and Community Development Manager. And I just wanted to give a brief overview. I know some of this has already been presented of the Community Development Block Grant. Our annual action plan is what we've been working on, and that goes to HUD tomorrow. So I just wanted to go over, our entitlement was $451,518. And there are HUD rules and caps on the different type of funding that we can award. Program administration cap is 20% of the grant. Public service cap is 15%, which does not leave us a lot of funding. As you can see further down, it's public service is $67,727.70, which is left to, with that cap of 15%, is what's left to help the service organizations, and then the remainder is non-public service. And I just wanted to, the next slide kind of shows this in a pie, makes it a little more visual of what we give in the public service with the 15%. And then in the green part of the pie is what's left for non-public, and that's $293,493.70. Public service projects, which are the 67,000, those are 501c3s that render services directly to the public. And then we have the non-public service. It's a CDBG national objective focusing on infrastructure, which includes the funds that we've recommended for Habitat for Humanity, and they're going to be constructing homes, and they're also going to be doing rehab work on some of the existing homes. And then what they want to do, the purpose is to actually make those for sale to create more home ownership opportunities for City of Bradenton residents. We also have the Bradenton Police Department receiving funds, and that meets the requirements. It's blight and slum code enforcement, so they're going to be monitoring in the community the dilapidated and abandoned properties, which, as we know, add to the blight and slum, and also to crime, homelessness, etc. So then we get to the advertising requirements, and HUD does have quite a few of those, but we want to make sure the public has an opportunity for input. And also that those subrecipients that are interested in applying know about the availability of funding, have the deadlines and the application in plenty of time to complete the application. And we also ask for citizen input. So we had 2 this year, events, and they were held at the library. We also allow citizens a 30-day comment period, so they can make comments on the projects that we're looking at supporting, and any comments that they may have about those programs, or if they think we should be putting funds toward a different purpose. Then we had the public hearing, which was on the 24th, with giving also community members a chance to come up at the city council meeting and express any concerns or any suggestions they have to the annual action plan. So today, I just wanted to kind of go over that, see if there are any questions, and then ask if we can have a motion to approve the annual action plan so that it can be submitted to HUD.
Questions?
I just,
Ms. Moore?
did we file my form?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Moore will not be voting.
So I think, and Mr. Russell can guide me, I think we have filed the requisite form, and I have to tell you all that I am not able to vote and have to abstain. Because I'm serving on the, right, I'm serving on the board of Step Up Suncoast, who is a proposed recipient.
Does she make any money from that board? Thought that if you didn't get paid for doing those volunteer jobs.
Oh, that's fair.
No, that, I mean, that's typically accurate for, in terms of the voting conflicts at the local level, but because she serves as a board member, it is a different analysis, so, no, she can't vote. We're gonna file the appropriate memo with HUD, and we'll go from there.
All right.
Mayor, I just have one
Yes.
question. I ask it on behalf of a couple of city councilors. What do we do as far as notification for the public, as far as availability of some of these construction and rehab funds? Because a lot of times, some of the councilors says, that's an awful lot of money for one project. Are we better off spreading it wide? And your response often is, we only have so many applications, which begs the questions, what do we do as far as outreach to notify the public that there is funding opportunities available?
Right. We actually, when we have the citizen input, we talk about the projects that we are.
Can you talk more into the microphone?
Oh, of course. At the citizen input events, we talk about what the different recommendations are, and then at those, the individuals that are in attendance, we kind of go over what the grants are going to be, or the subrecipients are going to be receiving funds for, and talk about that there is going to be, like they'd mentioned, the dollar land purchase and what Habitat's going to be doing with their project, and that they're now really focusing on affordable housing and getting residents. So we talk about it at that, and then we also, when we announce the citizen input, the 30-day comment period, we also talk them through what the different funds are being recommended for and what the uses are going to be. So we do that as well.
Are there any active marketing as it relates to, I don't know, at the 26th Street Dream Center or at the Pirates games or whatever, where you could basically get to larger swaths of the public that
Right.
might say,
Yeah,
well,
that
let me
would be
read this
great.
quick brochure and maybe I could take advantage of it.
I think that's a great idea. Would love to do that.
Ms. Coachman?
The events that you are holding or you're attending, how is the public notified of those events?
We actually do an advertisement in two papers, La Gaceta and the Bradenton Herald.
And maybe we should look at some
Right.
other
right.
ways.
If there are other
because
ways. I did talk with HUD. It came up, I think, at the last meeting about digital advertising. They will allow that to be a supplemental advertising, but it will not replace the advertising in the paper.
No, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
say for it to replace, but be in addition to.
Right,
because
right. So that's something we
think
can
it's
look
reaching
into as
a
well,
lot
and
of
I was aware of that. So we are going to look into different avenues.
Our communications department, who sits behind you, runs our website, and they also run 3 of the largest social media channels, being Facebook and Instagram and things like that. And they do a really good job and have expanded our capacity. That's probably a good resource too. Yeah, because we used to have a saying in government that if you wanted to put something where no one would see it, put it in the legal notice section of the newspaper. Yeah, and newspapers today are, is not, the circulation isn't what they used to be. But you're right, HUD and a lot of other folks use them as the official requirement for public notice of the like. Would you like to introduce Karen, your assistant, to
Yes,
everybody?
I would love to
Yep,
introduce
yep.
Karen. This is Karen Swartz, and she is the Housing and Community Development Specialist, who we are very happy to have on board. And she's been a great help in catching up and getting the word out and working with citizens on their applications for SHIP.
Yep, I've had a couple conversations with Karen, and I've been very impressed at her passion and interest in keeping things going in a positive direction, and you're supporting you and Nilsa and everybody. Yep.
We really appreciate her.
Thank you very
Any
much.
other questions and comments, different things? One thing that I will just say is, and not getting too deep into the woods, but we're glad that everybody that can have opportunity to have some health issues are here with us. And we appreciate what you do, and glad things hopefully are going in a positive direction compared to what they could have gone.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Thank
May
you.
I,
Yes.
may I add something too? I agree with what the mayor said, but also, I just want to say, of course, I haven't been up here very long, but I've been here long enough to see that your department is really working.
Thank you.
I've seen a lot of movement, and I'm sure there's more to come. So your hard work is not going unnoticed.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And with Karen and I as a team, we've been able to accomplish more. So really happy to be helping more citizens and looking for more grants and being able to have more of an impact.
Well,
on the
you're
community.
a dynamic duo.
Is
Well,
that,
thank
is that a
you.
motion, Mrs.
Oh, that's a
Kuchar?
motion, yes.
To approve Resolution 2464?
Yes.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4.
Abstaining?
She's,
Oh, abstain, yeah, you're right. Abstain, 5,
Yes.
1.
Yes.
Carries 4-0 with the proper paperwork. Mr. Rudisil will help Mrs. Moore get done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You all.
All right, anything else, Mr. Perry, you want to talk about?
If you'd like, I can give you an update on the storm now, or.
Yeah, why don't we
later.
do the storm update first before we go to council reports?
Okay. I could probably give, I don't know, an hour presentation, but we don't have that much time, and I don't really think that
Is
that's.
that microphone still broke there? No, I was saying that, so we don't want an hour presentation.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, everyone knows that we had a 100-year event. It's actually the third 100-year event since 2017, and defined basically as 12 inches more rain in the area. It overtook a lot of our systems as it relates to utility infrastructure, and we anticipated that it would. Talked about private laterals, inflow infiltration, major lift station failures, plant problems and the like, and really, it was Tampa Bay wide. Mayor sent me an article that was in the Tampa Bay Times Sunday, and it looked at the totality of Pinellas and Hillsborough and Manatee and Sarasota. And I don't think anybody was really immune to this event. We don't build infrastructure for these events. As Mr. Tomasco said, he provided a nice update, I think around August 6th or 7th, about what Sarasota Bay Estuary was doing. And the way he spelt it out was really interesting, to the extent of, he says, we look at these storms, we try to provide stormwater infrastructure and wastewater infrastructure, and we do it on a 100-year basis. And he said, but really, we only have about 50 years of valuable linear data that we can look at to do any sort of calculations of what's an exceedance, what isn't, averages, volumes, flows, things like that. And ultimately, they will go out to areas that are always in a higher jeopardy of their estuary, and they will do water quality testing. But it takes a few days. They usually test for two things: fecal bacteria load, things that can make you sick, and nutrient loads, things that can make the ocean environment sick, seagrass and the like. And we don't want in any way, to contribute to that. And we do everything we can, and my hat goes off to the folks at Public Works, of course, fire and police, and even planning and everybody in the emergency management part of the city that handled this storm and the previous storms. And we'll be building the PSOC, opening that up soon. But the reality is that we still got a high climb, is the best way to put it, with what we have to do for aged infrastructure. And it's nobody's real fault that you can blame. But we need to make up for some lost time. I think that's a fair statement to make. The good news is that typically the funding for that comes from two sources. The first major source is internally against a rate. And we are in financially pretty good shape to be able to continue to do that. As you all know, we currently have about $48 million on a line of credit. We haven't used it all, but on approved lending at preferred interest rates from the state revolving fund. What the two projects that are undergoing right now are basically, it's actually three. It's the clarifier, which should increase our ability at the wastewater treatment plant. But, again, the wastewater treatment plant, it's paper rated at 9. Originally, when it was built at 6 MGD, million gallons per day. And then we did some improvements to the headworks, I want to say 7, 8, 9 years ago. And we didn't do improvements to the filters. They get an engineer to do a paper rewrite on the permit, and it goes up to 9. But really, when you look at it, the filters are part of the problem in that phase of treating the water. And each one of those filters is up to $10 million, and there's 4 of them, frankly. So you're talking about big money improvements. There are other things that oxidation processing and things like that will help us significantly. And we're putting together and have put together a plan to execute that. But my point with it is that we are going to have to take a serious look and hard commitment at over the next 5 to 6 years about what we have to do to bring our utility up. We cannot fix in 20 weeks, in 20 months, in 20 days of a storm what has taken probably 40, 50 years, basically. And a lot of it's the city growth. The interesting thing is Lift Station 14 is one of our major lift stations, and it's on Weirs Creek down there on 17th Avenue, around 27th, I think. And we had a pretty major failure over there. And that being a major lift station, there are 4 pumps in that lift station, each one with a separate wet well that moves millions of gallons of water from the west side of Bradenton. I'm going to try to put this on here. It might even illustrate a little bit if I can get that all on. You can see 14, and this down here, it goes to the water treatment plant and the like. And so it really, this area down here is all going to be southwest Bradenton, down by Walmart and that area. These orange ones are the private lift stations we talked about earlier. And then you're going to, there's also Village Green and areas also that are on the west side. That's some older infrastructure. But those 4 pumps, they're very high capacity volume pumps. The water that's in there, basically the storm water from Walmart, takes 6 days to reach our plant. Think of that. That's how long it takes under normal pressure conditions. That was overburdened with Station 14. We lost 1 pump. The other pump was having problems. We had meetings after this, and we say, why are we losing these pumps and things like that? And really, a lot of it has to do with electronic surges, that even though you have a pump in there, the electricity at 480 volts, which is huge high voltage that these pumps have to run on, it's dirty electricity by FPL. It's not FPL's fault, it's just the technology. And so you've got to regulate that, because what we're trying to do is run variable speed pumps that aren't going to run at maximum capacity all the time and burn out quickly and do other things. And so now we're dealing with electrical engineering. I don't think that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the mayors, the city administrators, the public works director knew about what they call wave harmonics, which is the quality of the electricity that comes in and how you can regulate it and make it cleaner so it doesn't defeat and compromise your electronic processors as well as the end component. motor is basically an impeller with a bunch of wires in it, but electrical currents that go in there are pretty important and how they're controlled. That's a long version, but that's the depth of what we have to rebuild. After a meeting, I had some electrical engineers in there, obviously our civil engineers, our public works, senior executive staff, the top electricians out of that we have. We have 16 electricians, and our top electrician, Chris, he's worked on some major industrial products. He knows his electrical systems and phases and all that technical stuff. And they're like, we have to fortify this because it's subject to so much interference where it can fail like it failed during that storm. And we really weren't looking, we were doing some of that stuff, but we got to look closer at that. So it's collection, it's transmission, it's treatment, it's the like. The other thing is that's interesting, when you look at our wastewater treatment plant, we don't have a retention pond nearby. When you look at Manatee counties, particularly the 65th Street treatment plant that's down by Cortez Road in between 53rd and Cortez on 66th Street. What do you see next to the golf course? Big old lake and retention area, right? Well, they can basically bypass their system when it gets overloaded and put some of that water there. We can't. We have to basically send it through a bypass pipe to an outfall that goes into the river. We didn't design the plant, the current administration, either at the department or otherwise, but we've got to look at what we're doing with this. We're looking at future aquifer recharge type things to be able to put it into the aquifer, but it's got to be treated to to a certain standard anyway. And then you look at the communications. We've had some problems with that during the storm. I stand up and certainly know that my responsibility has to take some responsibility for that, my position and the like. And you live and learn. I think, if it happened tomorrow, we'd be better at it and all. And I think that's true at the department as well. We did a pretty decent job, I thought, of getting you guys information. Kudos to the communications team. They try to keep you updated with a lot of valuable information for sure. And, we did the best we could. We always have to do better. That's just the bottom line. We will know a lot more about volumes and water quality and improvements probably in the months to come. And Mr. Williams and myself and Colonel Lee and Brandy and everyone else really will put a great deal of emphasis over the next month, the next year, the next 5 years on trying to do what we can. It's hard to fix again. I'll close with what I said. In 20 days, 20 months, what took 40, 50 years to kind of put in place. And that's where we're at.
But we're still going to take the mentality of face it and fix it.
Face it and fix it.
Face it and
That's
fix
what we're
it.
trying
I
to
think
do.
That's very important, that's what we've done with this council, what we've done since I've come in. And again, some of the things we don't control, some things we do to work forward to control, and that's important to continue that message. And I do think that we need to do a better job at messaging when, there was a comment on our fire station yesterday from an individual that, on the Facebook part of it, that says, why aren't we having a groundbreaking at our water treatment plant? Well, we could have had a huge groundbreaking at our water treatment plant because we had that, but that's not something that we were spreading out, but maybe we need to do that.
Yeah.
We need to answer to that because we've got a $30 million project going on right now that is out there, and we will be getting that information out, plus the 48 million, or 47 I thought it was, but 48 that we're still working, plus the lining that we've done to try to stop the I&I, plus all the other things. And some of it we were doing before, and some of it we're doing more aggressively now because of water keepers, but nobody is burying their head in the sand and saying we're not going to do anything. We're going to face it and fix it. Questions from the council?
I had one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you had said normally it's, I think, if I understood it right, normally it's 6 million gallons per day that go through.
6 to 7, yes,
We
ma'am.
can handle 9, but do you know what actually went through at this point?
We think 27 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was in a short time with a lot of.
Yeah,
Well, I
that's
know.
right.
I just think
It
it
wasn't-
kind of speaks to
Right.
the.
That's not what the
event
total
being-
by,
Yeah.
right.
That wasn't.
We're trying to calculate that. It's very complex, and we're using different modeling to
Yeah.
try to figure that out. Because we don't want to report one thing and then find out it was something else later.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
one of the things that I think people have to understand, when they say that number, there's some misinformation out there about raw sewage. That was incorrect information.
I just think it's the volume that you're having to deal with. That's all I'm,
Yeah.
you know.
But if we didn't have the storm, it still would have been 6 million.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so the difference between 6 and 27 is basically 21, you know, and that's, that's, when you're talking about total amounts of
more than
rainfall,
4 times.
yeah, over the city,
Yeah.
it's in the, I think, billions. And over the county, it's probably in the trillions. It's
Mr. Tomasco did a little statistical thing on our 27 million.
Yep.
And when he went down, he talked about Sarasota, and because I was on the phone with him for about 2 hours Saturday.
Thank you for doing that.
And just to get information, because we want to get the right information out. And he said, if you look at the volume of what you do, what's happening, the excess, even with that 27 million, we're still under 1% of what happened in that time period. So again, we're never going to make light of anything.
Right.
But you've also got to look at the volume that came through. If we normally do 6 and there was 27 million, kind of says 21 million of it was probably I&I.
Yeah. That's different types of stormwater.
Yep.
I'll tell you one thing, I don't think people go to the bathroom 4 times as much when there's a storm, or wash their clothes 4 times as much, or take 4 times as many showers. However, once it does commingle after it reaches the headworks, that's another matter.
It's a thing.
As far as calculation.
So I've got Mr. Kramer, Ms. Coachman, and Ms. Moore.
I did all those 4 things, by the way. I did all those to excess, yeah. When I was driving around, because I, couldn't take the cop out of me. So when I came to the meetings and heard the reports, and then the mayor and I drove around with some city staff. I would like to compliment the Public Works Department. I know they're dealing with everything with that, but I really think that, I know there were roads that flooded, I know there were areas that flooded, but a lot of the other areas didn't. There were no blockages of drains. Everything was clear and open, and that's not been the case in years past. I'll just put it out there. It really was impressive to see. So I think that, I know we got a ton of rain, but those pipes were flowing fast because of there was more coming into it just on those situations.
Right. The tide tables too. You were in the emergency
Yeah.
response center. You saw the tide tables, and they were unique tide tables where even the low tide was a high tide, so to speak.
But even that, I live on the river. I walked down to Curry Park, and it never, the issues in the roadways were not from anything in our area. I know in your area it's different, but in our area it was not from anything coming over the seawalls. It was just from falling rain. And even that, in areas that generally keep a lot of falling rain on the ground, were draining fantastic. So thank you again to the staff.
Ms. Coachman?
Yeah, and that was something I wanted to mention also, that some of the areas that typically flood, quite seriously, it seemed like things were flowing well compared to in the past. I wanted to ask if I remembered something, because I'm learning a lot about this. Now, isn't there a time when there's a peak that we can handle 17 million? So even though that 27 was still even over that, and that's not something we can handle for a very extended period.
Right. Yeah. The peak rating for the plant, it's non-sustainable, but apparently engineers provide a peak rating, and it is 17 million gallons per day. But again, I don't think our plant could sustain at that level. Yeah. I think that assumes, like, if the biology of the bugs are eating the bugs at the perfect balance, and the filter grids are all perfectly configured and operating, and the blankets are all moving in the right direction, and a whole host of other dynamics.
And it stops raining.
And it stops raining.
Or flow coming through.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we've all learned a lot more about wastewater than we ever thought we would when we decided to work for the city.
Ms. Moore?
I was going to mention the storm. That was going to be my ward comments, so now I'm using all my ward comments. I think it's important to mention that, yes, the communication was exactly what I was asking for. So the text updates were fabulous. I love the level of detail, even if it wasn't something I was touching with my hands, it definitely, it makes me calmer, alleviates my concerns when I see that level of detail. So I appreciate that very much, and I would like to see us continue that. To your point and your point about what we're doing, we are doing a lot with the projects. The bonded money is really almost all accounted for, and the projects I know will improve our situation. But Mr. Perry has a legal size chart that's like 6 pages long, and so I want to note as a 100% positive that from top to bottom, staff works so hard. I mean, such a hard working operation. But I would be frustrated, honestly, if I was any of you from top to bottom, because you're basically working with aged stuff that is, it needs to be fixed. And while we have started this, and I'm excited about that, I would like us, I think it is our fault, honestly. I will take responsibility for this, because I think as the policymakers, we have to ask staff, please focus on those, those not fun, smelly, ugly, projects that are going to be crucial, really, to help you and Public Works work smarter instead of so hard, and really push that needle so that we're not always, having to put staff in that situation. And so that's my thought, is I would like to see it. I believe that is what I just heard you say, is that you have a list, you want to see us encourage you guys to do more in-depth capital projects in this realm. And I just wanted to note that that is my goal as well, that this is my priority. Whatever we have to do to get, to let staff run with this and do more projects and really, get it to where it needs to be, bring it up to date. That would be something I would encourage us to do.
And I don't disagree with you on that, Ms. Moore, but there's things that, when I got on the council in 2013, I said, let's pave all the roads, and that was 115 miles of roads, and Mr. McClellan said, first off, we would bottleneck our city, and there's not enough contractors out there to do it. There's not enough, and so you've got to come up with a plan. And I think that's what they're coming, it's what I've stressed since I got here 4 years ago in this job, because as a council person, you don't see as much of the day-to-day and everything that's going on. But as the mayor, you're in it and you're talking about it, and that's what we've been talking about since day one. And then when Mr. Perry's got here 3 years ago, the bandwidth wasn't there in the staff. We're getting that bandwidth. We're starting to see what we need to do. We've got 65 pump stations, and we've got 65 different pumps, because you always like to have a backup, but you can't have 65 backups. So, and I'm saying that facetiously a little bit,
right.
But, we want to find out if that pump didn't work, and I mean, we can highlight a lot of employees that 3 or 4, 5 days. And, our job was easy, sitting back and watching from but when you go out at 10 o'clock at night, you see an individual that, is stressed because he can't get it. And it's like, what do you need? Well, I think we'll be okay. No. If we get 2 more vacuum trucks, can they help you? And we had 2 more vacuum trucks in 2 hours that were helping him. But they're stepping up, those individuals. And then I think they forced that individual to go home and get at least 2 hours sleep, because he cared that much.
I saw him at 7:45 the next morning.
Yeah, so, and that was at almost midnight when I saw him. And it was like, no, tell us what you need. What? And we've got such great employees that they're trying to make the rubber bands work. But, we can't fix it. You can't say, okay, build a new plant in a week. Something that took 40 years to get to, that maybe should have been done, that's what we're doing. And I mean, it's not going to be any excuses, and we've got the financial part of it, You know, this board is 5-0 supportive of that. Other councils in the past have not been, you know, and so, you know, where it's like, hey, let's face it and fix it, but fixing it may take 10 years, unfortunately. Even if we said, here's $1 billion, fix it, it's still gonna take the process. And unfortunately, that's just, we can't, there's no, the equipment isn't out there, the staff isn't out there, even if we hired everybody.
Yeah.
You know, hired companies.
You know, to say one thing about the staff is they're great to be in a foxhole with. They really are. They'll just walk over coals to serve the public and get things working, and they stay on mission. But they're also really smart. When you're in a board meeting with them, they're very impressive as far as the expertise they know. These guys know what we need. And ladies, they know what we need to do. And it's our job to try to find a way to organize all that, fund it, and then, as you pointed out, process it over time. The improvements of the plant themselves are a pretty good example of that. Poole and Kent, I think the original study was done right before I got here, so 2020 thereabouts. I remember as soon as I got here, it was completed, that said, this is what it's an evaluation of your system, and this is what the highest priority recommendations are. And then what we had to do was put it out to a contractor. It came in at 16 million. They had funded 8 million at the time. We said, oh no, these bids are way too high. We put it out a second time, so there went about another 6 months, and the lowest bid was 16 million. And so then we had to go through the process, and that, you know, goes through the process for another 6 months, and then we give them a notice to proceed, and they've been building it now for probably the last year plus thereabouts. And hence, there's 4 years. I mean, really.
Yeah. So, and that was even done before the Waterkeeper stuff.
It was done well before the Waterkeeper.
So see, the city wasn't not looking at the future.
Really good point.
But some of the things you didn't anticipate with these 100-year storms, and I don't know how we could have, you know, and that's the thing. Ms. Coker?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was almost practically day one for when Mr. Perry started, and I remember, I mean, I think the numbers were kind of closer to $1 billion of focusing on that infrastructure that, you know, I think probably before it was more like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And now we've gone to more of a, let's start anticipating, let's know what the life cycle is on things. And when we fix it, let's fix it right. And so I think it's been loud and clear, but if it hasn't, you know, we are focused on, you know, bringing our infrastructure into state of the art.
We are.
So.
And again, we got smart people, and we will get there. I think we will get there, and don't feel alone, because Sarasota, that seems to be, you know, a lot of people say, well, they're wealthy and their tax base. Look at what happened down there, and they have just as many problems as we have when you talk about infrastructure.
And there were some doubters when you brought that proposal forward. Not everyone was, well, you know, on board, but I think we've got a good group.
Mayor's approach: face it, fix it. That's what we need. All need to be on board, because that's what these folks are doing.
And we're not going to blame any council people that were here from around 2000 to 2012 at all. Ms. Barnaby.
I was going to say, allow me to quote Mr. Gallo, who would sit up here and when we would have to do the tough thing as far as changing some rates or facing some of these things, he would look at those complaining and say, it seems to me like you got a really good deal for a really long time, and you should be thankful for that. So, just a thought.
I'll use Mr. quote, the best thing about today is tomorrow, so let's leave it with that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Perry. And I would like to call up Mr. DeLong at this moment for a quick little update on a couple things.
Sure. Well, our news is a little bit better than what you just listened to. The PCD staff does go out and do post-storm assessment. We use a system called Crisis Track. This year I'm proud to say we only had 3 staff members get motion sickness in the cars driving around. Last year we had 4 after Idalia. But we go out after the storm and the roads are cleared and drive around and look for damage. This isn't just a fallen tree in a yard. We're looking for structural damage, damaged accessory structures such as fences, sheds, carports, and things like that. This year after the storm, we only identified 15 properties, which is, I think some of them may have actually been damaged last year from Idalia, because I had one I took a picture of. I'm like, this looks familiar to me. But we had 10 staff members come in. We had 5 teams. Each team had about 20 districts to go through. We spent about 6.5 hours on the Monday after the storm out, going through, and we just found some minor damage. The most extensive damage we did find, we did have a multifamily development that did have some water infiltration into it, that about 15 units did get damaged. Our plans examiner and I met FEMA at about 6 o'clock last Thursday evening over there and went through the building with the manager. We got some photos, so hopefully FEMA can get in there and help them out. Other than that, we just saw some missing siding off of buildings, some trees into a carport. We did have a tree leaning into the front porch of a house, but the house was not structurally damaged, so that was good news. But all in all, we did come across pretty well in the end.
That damage was from a roof leak.
Yeah.
On those 15 units.
Actually, some of it we think was coming in around the windows too. Yeah.
It wasn't from flood coming up.
No, and they did have a door that was ajar. It did not help on one of the floors. So, yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we saw with the flooding, that we haven't heard of any major flooding in houses in the city of Bradenton.
Correct.
Right, which we had the streets, and I was impressed at driving around, especially in some areas that we would have flooding in the past. What some of the drainage we've done over the last several years did mitigate that, but also we know what our tides bring in at times. Some of our areas that we're doing different drainage things from coming over the top is working to a point. Now, there's some still stresses that we're working through that to fix, but you didn't really see, you saw it as about the same as others, and one of them, I drove on the street 2 or 3 times and made Mr. Perry nervous one time, but it was never up to my truck, and my truck's not a high water truck, but it was never up to, and then we got on a spot where we were sitting was completely dry. So, you know, I mean, the water was all around us, but where in the past you'd see it a lot higher. And
I personally want to thank the leadership here. This was my first storm in this role, and I'm speaking also on behalf of Tamara Tournay, who was our deputy building official. She was awesome to work with through this whole process. She's been managing the crisis track for our building division, and it was a learning experience for both of us. I hope we don't have to go through another one this year, but it was a good one to start with for both of us. So I do appreciate everyone's guidance and leadership in helping Tamara and I through the process of going through this.
Well, thanks for that update.
You're welcome.
I just think, again, from my standpoint, thank you to everyone that spent the time, the effort, and, you know, we got a lot of good pictures, but no stickers on our high water vehicle that the chief could talk about from the fire department, because we were closest unit and went down in an area. You want to come up, chief, and tell about it? But it was something that we had at some of the last storms said we need a high water vehicle, and we got it.
Yeah, so the timing was amazing how that worked out with that vehicle. I mean, the paint was still literally drying on the thing. So what we did is we acquired this vehicle from forestry like we have in the past. So we were able to get it to the point of paint over at the port, and then with the storm coming, we were able to get it staged here in the city, get Cho and his group to go through it and get it ready. And then from overworking at the EOC, you know, all of a sudden with the amount of water that hit, you know, they muster up all the high water assets in the county. And we just happened to have ours as the closest ready to go. So that vehicle was instrumental in probably, I don't know, 150 at least evacuations, you know, including, you know, people, pets, you know, down in southern Manatee's area. And then as soon as the water was rising out east, we dispatched it out there, along with our crew that was the Swift Water crew with the our rescue boat and whatnot. So they were working right away, and it was a busy day for sure.
Yeah, and that's one of those, when you said it was painted out at the port, we were able to work with the sheriff's office and get it out there at a well-reduced rate to get it painted, as well as we get all of that stuff for, you know, well-reduced. But we needed that. We have some high vehicles, but we didn't have that truly high water vehicle that we were able to get through
It was definitely
police and fire.
a blessing to have.
Yeah, so. All right, any questions? Nope. Thank you, Chief.
And Mayor, just so you know, we're in the process of debris cleanup right now. We've just brought our contractors in. Colonel Lee just sent me a couple of photographs.
Yeah.
Want to let you all know. Mostly vegetative type cleanup, construction debris, things like that.
All right, before we get to council reports, is there any other department heads that have anything, since we've talked the most? Chief?
I just wanted to end on a good note, although now I'm not ending. We have a mechanism at the agency for coworkers to acknowledge other coworkers, and had I not received this, I probably wouldn't have known this occurred. Kind of speaks to what I was saying earlier about how our folks take care of people. As you're aware, we have an elder abuse unit. They're really kind of supposed to be doing presentations and dealing with elder abuse crimes. This was a recognition from Brenda Lovett. She found out about it. On today's date, I was made aware of an act of kindness by Detective Krula, Detective Woolard, and Officer McNeil. Detective Krula worked an elder fraud case where an 88-year-old woman who cares for her disabled 56-year-old daughter lost her life savings to someone promising her he would do work around her house. He got onto her bank account. He took all of her money. The work never was completed, obviously, and her savings were gone. Her yard was in terrible shape, overgrown grass, weeds to the point where you couldn't tell where pavers were, front door, everything. Those three officers, out of the kindness of their heart, took it upon themselves to go to her home, clean up her yard, weed eating, mowing on their own time, and using their own personal equipment. That's just amazing to me, and we see those things every day, but it doesn't make it any less impactful. So obviously I'll be putting them into the city's recognition program, but right there, I mean, I got folks out there using their own equipment just to help a member of our community. It just speaks to the high caliber employees that I have. Just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, ma'am.
May I share
Chief.
something also? I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I forgot that I'm also serving as a board member of an organization called the Manatee Florida Association for Women Lawyers, and they're about to do an elder abuse panel. And I mentioned that BBT now has this unit, and I was tasked actually with trying to connect them and see if they would like to speak as part of the panel.
Would love to.
I am very happy to hear that. But what I thought was interesting was another board member emailed me yesterday to tell me what a coincidence. She just went to the bank by herself. I mean, on a personal matter. And the teller asked her if she wanted one of the BPD Elder and Vulnerable Adult Fraud Unit booklets. So BPD is going around to the banks and leaving materials and whatnot. So the presence is definitely recognizable and impressive. And I was very impressed, and I was actually a little proud, so.
We are really
Glad you
making
brought
a
it up.
difference in this community. I know the mayor's been very involved. He's been coming out to some of our presentations. We tapped into some funds we had, $5,000 to prepare those booklets. We've been hitting banks, and I'll tell you, the feedback that I'm getting on a weekly basis. Just last week, a teller who had just received our training, the grandfather-grandson scam, dad or grandpa, I'm in jail, please send bail money. She was able to stop it and call us, and just really an incredible job they're doing. But these are the side notes, right? They're becoming part of their families as they're doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Yes. Ms. Singer. Hello.
I want to introduce our new building official, Scott Williams. You want to stand up? He's coming to us from Manatee County, previously with Holmes Beach, and extensive experience beyond that. And he's sitting in the same spot next to the lobby conference room that Pat was in, so if you want to stop by and say hello and ask him questions. He got to start immediately after the storm. Unfortunately, it interrupted his onboarding. But yeah, we're glad to have him here.
Good. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Yep. All right. Anything else from the staff before we kind of finish up with light council reports?
Light.
Oh. We'll start in Ward 3.
Thank you, sir. I get to be the first one to say welcome back to school, all the kids. I know Ms. Coachman and I, especially for us, But yeah, it's good to have kids back in school. It's nice to see people back on the roads. Things are getting back to normal, you know, which is good. But please be careful. We have requisitioned, I think, everything we need for the school zone cameras, but they're not operational here yet. I have seen some signs in some spots in the county, and I think I heard the mayor say they've taken special steps to get those up and running quickly.
It'll be a roll-in over the first half of the school.
But yeah, and I have some residents in my ward who already called and said, hey, can you put them in this spot and that spot? Because everybody thinks the main roads are the ones, but then if your Waze or your Apple Map says go the back way, people don't just peruse every way down those roads, they speed down those roads. And so it needs to be safe everywhere. So again, with I guess it was still Tropical Storm Debbie as it came by, and then hurricane. Thank you again to all the staff. I was able to sit in the city's EOC meetings here over at the police department, and it was just impressive to have everybody on board, especially some really new people on board. Tiffany was pretty much an all-star getting the message out to everybody. And Colonel Lee, thank you, and your staff again for what you did. Tamara and Lance were the ones who went around the city with me, and Lance really wanted to sit in the back of the Bronco, so we got a shoehorn and put him in. So, but no, it's just good to have everybody collaborating. It's a really fun environment here with the city, and especially to have good people to have your back. It's very important. So very happy to report on that. Other than that, everybody have a great next couple of weeks.
All right, thank you. Ms. Moore?
I did use up most of my time, but I will also just mention that I'm going to the Florida League of Cities Conference. I don't know, it'd be great if I wasn't. I would love your company, I guess the best way to put it. So that's happening. Kids are going back to school, including mine, which is always bittersweet, I say. And we had a couple of lift station issues, I think. I mean, but that's, kind of the way that is until we can, get to that 6-page list. And that's pretty much it. I echo the sentiment that we have a good working group right now. And it makes me hopeful that we'll really be able to get to it, check them off.
Thank you. Ms. Kitchman?
Okay. I also, throughout the meeting, have said some of the things that I was planning to say on council comments. Yes, it's back to school. Yay. No, seriously, it is great to have the kids back because without them, we really have nothing to do. So it's great. But also to just add, and I'm going to try not to spend too much time saying this because I get teary for some reason. I'm at that age. I don't know what's going on. But we really do, in all departments, have some awesome people working for this friendly city. I think now maybe we should add the friendly and dedicated city because that's what we see throughout each crisis that we incur. And we need to listen to you. We need to listen to our employees tell us what they need. And as a council, we should try our best to make those needs fulfilled. But it's great to be back and moving forward. Yeah, face it and fix it.
Well, you're alive in 5, right?
Hey, Ward 5 is,
say it, how do we know?
is still alive.
Ms. Coker?
Oh, Ms. Coker. Okay. Of course, yeah, a lot's, thank you all. Again, I don't think you can ever give too much appreciation because the staff and the leadership and what you did through the storm, and Tiffany, special shout out. It was felt so much more informed this time, and I really appreciated that. And all the kids back in school, so we have to be mindful when we're driving. But Friday night is special needs night at the Marauders game, and there's even going to be a really special thing going on. There's going to be a dunk tank, and our mayor's going to be in there. We've got a couple of county commission candidates that are going to be in the dunk tank. that I'm sure a lot of people would love to dunk. Yeah. So I would encourage everyone to go to the Marauders game on Friday night.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Barnaby.
I gave up dunk tanks years ago. I was very happy yesterday for the groundbreaking at our fire station, and I want to thank everyone for that. I think it was very well done, and I appreciated all of the thought and effort that went into it. I want to thank also the Public Works group and all the employees for their dedication and hard work during the storm. On my side of town, we've had issues in the past with what we call the looky-loos that want to come and drive down Review Boulevard when it's under 2 feet of water, which drives the water further up in the neighborhoods and further into people's houses. And this time, we did not have that. And I think it's because of your proactive approach to getting the big barricades out there and saying that the street was closed. And I really appreciated that, because I did not get the phone calls this time that I've gotten in the past. When the mayor was talking about having to repair pipes at his house, when we purchased a house on 21st Street that has only had 3 owners, and it was originally built by Mr. Lewis of Lewis Lumber Company. And in the early 2000s, we had to replace the pipe that went from the house to the street, because in 1948, they used something called Orangeburg pipe, which is basically wood and compressed paper. And it lasts for about 50 years. It does a pretty good job for about 50 years. But I'm thinking that we're going to have a lot of that kind of thing happening in my neck of the woods because of the age of the houses and how they were constructed and when they were constructed. So that was a lot of fun, because at our house, the trench had to be hand dug. They could not bring any equipment in to do it. So the only other thing I would like to add is my family's deepest sympathy to the family of Coach Stephen Olson, also known as Pigeon. He was a phenomenal coach, a good man, and a not half bad driver's ed teacher. And he will be missed.
Thank you. Just to echo kind of a lot of things, yesterday was fun seeing, even though the fire department's under construction now, and hopefully by July of next year-ish, somebody will be that first person to slide down the pole. Everybody wants that's the big thing at the fire station, is a pole. I'm thinking Mr. Gallo, but no. I told him that last night because it was a great tribute and obviously things that have been done. But looking back at the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and it does start at the top with Mr. Perry. One of the things that we tasked Mr. Perry coming in 3 years ago was really to see how we need to step up at a time of the year when we have these hurricanes and different storms, where the city of Bradenton, worked well, still works well with our EOC in Manatee County, but some of the stuff is on us. We're the biggest municipality, and I felt it was important why we didn't do those things as much as we could. We're still, can only have one EOC, but how do we help not only ourselves when we're back to storm's not over, but things are happening, but how we help during it. And, we will be with our PSOC, kind of that first line of defense for the islands at times and different things when storms are going on. So it's about the collaboration and what we do together to work together, and that's something that I think you've seen immensely over the last several years, more than we had seen it in years back. And just looking at it, my wife found online a picture probably on something in the 80s at some point, where the city council and the Manatee County was meeting, and it looked like more of a positive meeting. And then there was some things over the years wasn't as positive. But right now, things, couldn't be going better, working together, collaborating. We're going to disagree on some things at times, but how do we get it to that next level? And that next level is everyone sitting in this room, not up on this dais, from the staff level and all of our workers in the city of Bradenton. Because, as Mr. Perry just said, we have some great people, some very well-intentioned people and people that are willing to run through a wall for us if we need to. But we're trying to give them every opportunity to tell us what they need and to fix. And again, it's going to get tired of face it and fix it. In the 90s, they would have built that third bridge. You guys are going to hear me say that third bridge. But not because it's disrespecting people that didn't do it, but they didn't do it. We're going to do it. And it's going to change, hopefully, 30 years from now, the people sitting up here, that they'll be able to say, look, we still got issues, but there's things that are better because of the group that's here, not only up here, but out in those seats. That, you know, because I don't know, other than maybe one person and a couple of reporters, everybody else is staff in here, 2 people, I guess. But thank you for what you do. I know there's some of you that sit in the room a little longer than others. You know, Tamara, you were there the whole time, and I appreciate that because keeping things working. And Tiffany and a few others, but obviously our lead people are out on the streets doing things and finding things out and learning things. And I'm going to forget somebody. I know both Chief Gear and Canada were at the EOC, and we appreciate that because I feel that we need to be doing our stuff while you guys are protecting us at the EOC, where in the past you'd had more people there from the city. But you guys take that on for us so we can still be boots on the ground a little bit more. But every department is very important to be in their methods where they are. So IT was there. I mean, you could just go down the list. And then, of course, planning came out when they needed, and code enforcement and all of that. So we can go on, but thank you. And it's just a matter of saying, hey, we're here, we're going to face it and fix it, and we're going to try to get things going. So nothing else, Mr. Rudisell, do you have anything else for the good of the order?
I don't have anything.
All right, I just want to make sure. So, all right, we'll be adjourned.